Hello and welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn. Well folks, it's finally time to talk about a period of bleakness. A period of twisted humanoid aberrations and the decay of human morality. This is also known as the Dark Age of comics. There are a number of factors that contributed to the Dark Age, though most people attribute it to Watchmen and The Dark Knight Returns. Suddenly, comic books were in the public eye, and seeing quote-unquote realism in its stories, with ambiguous morality and having real-world issues present in stories, was suddenly the hot topic. In reality, a lot of real-world issues have been creeping into comics since the 60s, it's just no one really paid too much attention to it until those two stories. They were so radically different from what had been on the market before that it changed the industry. The problem is that people didn't quite understand why they changed the industry. The assumption was that because the stories were dark, that must have been why they were so successful. The truth was that they were just complex stories, and in Watchmen's case, everything was so well developed, foreshadowed, and had such complex characterization and moral themes that it was a work of genius. But then again, like Hollywood, whenever something is successful, the comic industry oversimplified things and decided that the reason was because of the dark storylines. Suddenly, characters had to be grim and gritty, with melodramatic narration and looser ethics when it came to crime fighting. And of course, the artwork reflected this gritty style, assisted by our old pal, Rob Liefeld. There are several characteristics of the Dark Age of comics, but for today's subject, we're going to talk about the artwork. People were beginning to pick up comics not because of interesting storylines or characters, but because of the art. Liefeld and other artists had an art style that was so different from traditional sequential artwork that it was considered new and edgy. And in the early 1990s, the artists were pissed. Dissatisfaction with Marvel's payment policies and ownership rights of characters caused a group of artists, including Rob Liefeld, Jim Lee, Todd McFarlane, and others, to band together, leave the company, and start their own, Image Comics. The focus was more on artwork instead of writing, and while sales were initially strong, over the years, continued delays on books and continually crappy art and writing caused people to suddenly realize what the hell it was they were paying for, and attitudes shifted away. By the late 1990s, most of the grim and gritty style of heroics were tossed aside in favor of more traditional heroes, and since then Image has changed its ways. After all, as Superman once put it, "These no-nonsense solutions of yours just don't hold water in a world of jet-powered apes and time travel." Today's subject was Image's first book off the press, and ironically, the first book I ever did a text review of back in 2007. As such, let's dig into Youngblood #1.
Atop the fourth wall, where bad comics burn. Linkara's gonna teach you all a lesson you won't learn. Rusty, you're not the smartest. Liefeld, you're not an artist. Anyone who's had a bad comic published, it can be your turn. Linkara, he's the man. But where's the birdie hat? Linkara, he has a magic gun. Where'd he purchase that? Linkara. Amazon, the drugs, Linkara. This comic sucks, Linkara.
Let's forgive for a second that the anatomy of these guys is suspect. Let's forgive that this is a dime-a-dozen group shot with everyone clumped together. Let's forgive the fact that we can't see their eyes on any of them, hence why I coined the term Youngblood's disease. Let's forgive all of that. But now let's get into the coloring. This is ridiculous! I can barely tell where one hero begins and another ends. You look at teams like the Justice League or the Titans, and each hero has a unique look and usually a colorful characteristic that makes them distinct. With this cover, they're all blending together, but then again, it's not like we'll see them as that distinct anyway. Right before the first page, there's a cardboard profile box featuring the only female hero of the Youngblood home team, Vogue. Here it is revealed that underneath her patriotic and independent skin beats the heart of a Russian defector. Because, you know, when I think patriotic, I think a purple and white bodysuit, clown face makeup, and huge shoulder pads too. The first page opens up, according to the comic, in Washington, D.C. at 12:17 p.m. A man and woman are out shopping. We get a smattering of tiny bits of exposition as we learn the man is named Jeff and that his date Shelley. Wouldn't believe the reports we have to fill out. Yeah, those TPS reports are a bitch. And as you can see here, just like on the cover, Jeff has no eyes. Look out, Daredevil! There's a new blind superhero on the block! A thief runs past several mall walkers down the escalators, and Jeff leaps down to apprehend him. His hips are pushed out at odd angles while he leaps from an implausible side angle, only for the next panel to see him tackling the thief from a straight angle at the thief's back. Physics! Jeff berates the thief with this splendid dialogue. "'Tis the season for giving, not stealing." Dude, it's July! A narration box reveals that a good hero can never let a crime go unpunished. Okay, then who do I have to punish for this comic? We cut to an assassin lining up a rather bizarre-looking gun that looks more like it's designed for caulking than long-distance shots. A voice warns Jeff of the danger, and I'm sure it was meant to come from Shelley, even though the dialogue balloon seems to indicate that it came from the assassin himself. Jeff's body now looks like it's ballooned out so he can be an extra in Weird Al's Fat music video. He grabs a pen from his pocket and tosses it at the assassin. This somehow hits the assassin back with enough force to knock him off of a ledge. Physics! A bunch of onlookers reveal that our friend Jeff here is Shaft.
Shut your mouth.
I'm just talking about Shaft.
And we can dig it.
Jeff begins to search the body. And by search, I mean he holds out his hand towards the body and says, "No ID, no pulse, no answers, no editor." From what I've read, Youngblood came about because Liefeld had been interested in doing a Teen Titans book for DC, and that Shaft here was supposed to be Roy Harper. As such, it's quite a shock to learn that Roy can search bodies just by looking at them. Shaft gets a call from HQ and apologizes to Shelley as he runs off. Shelley looks dreamily at her boyfriend and says, "Go nail him!" And if that means hammering nails into our skulls with the artwork, trust me, he's already done that. We cut to Baltimore, Maryland, 12:32 p.m.
My name's Friday. I carry a badge.
Here we meet Bedrock, later Bad Rock because of legal issues. The Grey Mama's boy who's eating lunch as he gets the call to come into the HQ as well. He even asks to be excused as the mother says how proud she is of him. And by the perpetual smile on her face, I'd think the Stepford Wives had been made into a comic book if not for the fact that even though it's the 90s, she has a head of 80s hair. We then cut to Arlington, Virginia, underground, 12:44 p.m. And I start to wonder what the hell's taken HQ so long as they appear to be calling their agents in 10-minute intervals. Anyway, in underground, we meet the next Youngblood member, Die Hard, with a vengeance! Okay, it's just Die Hard, but seriously, did Rob Liefeld even think these names as he was planning them? Although I do admit, Bruce Willis coming in and smacking these dorks around would have elevated the comic in my eyes. So what does this mysterious, eyeless character laying on a multicolored slab have to say? "I am needed. This time I must make better use of my freedom. With a vengeance!" Okay, I'll stop now. Cut to almost half an hour later in the same location, only above ground now, where the buzz-cut Youngblood member Chapel is in bed with a naked woman as he gets his own call from HQ. He tells her to go and that she should leave her number. We then see Chapel in his iconic costume, even though it's only like 2 seconds later. The outfit consists of a leather jacket, red pants, skull face paint, and a gun right out of Men in Black. His inner monologue gives us this insightful wisdom. "You gotta give 'em hope. As Shaft would say, it's good PR." Dude, there is no PR firm in the world that could make that outfit look impressive or manly. Cut to 5 hours later as we see Vogue hopping around rooftops of Washington, D.C., revealing that she knows she got the call a few hours ago. Shaft's probably pacing the halls by now. They think I'm at their beck and call. Let 'em wait! Remember, kids, she's patriotic. We finally cut to what I can only presume is HQ, since there isn't any establishing caption to reveal this, which is weird considering every other place we've been to gave us one. Shaft comes in and we see him walking up to a huge-ass computer console where a normal-looking woman and a person with flaming green hair named Photon are. Shaft suddenly acts like a complete asshole as he says for no particular reason, "Oh, so we get the pleasure of your company tonight, Photon?" I'd question the relevance of that panel, but then again it's not like any of these panels have been all that essential to this comic. The rest of the Youngblood team shows up and Shaft berates Vogue for being late. Before they can get in a good little dialogue about what exactly our fearless team leader will do if she shows up late again, the woman at the control chair reveals that there's a request for assistance coming in. Wait a second, what the heck was it that required Youngblood's presence 5 hours ago that they were called in for? Shaft asks what the situation is, and the woman reports that one of Youngblood's transport vehicles is under attack. She says it's strong arm engage! The 4! Actually that's only 2, and why the need for 3 exclamation points? While Vogue tries to cover up that bit of idiotic dialogue by asking, didn't we put 2 of them away? Die Hard and Chapel say that Strong Arm and Gage are attempting to make an escape attempt. So Shaft orders, Art attack! Take cover! The artwork's coming right for us! Cut to some random street in what I can only presume is Washington, D.C., since again, the establishing captions have abandoned us. We do get captions of a few bits of dialogue, albeit they're all colored white, so we have no idea who's saying it unless they say the other person's name. Let's make this one quick, team. The 4 have never really been that tough. I want Strong Arm this time. He's all yours, Die Hard. So, is it possible to live hard? Strong Arm, like our old pal Mech Max from Dooms 4, has no visible joints to speak of for his arms, making him look like a cheap action figure. Gage is, well, just a guy with guns. Strong Arm rips off the doors of the truck, revealing Deadlock and Starbright, and I have to say, they actually have semi-decent outfits, albeit Deadlock seems to have an inexplicable ponytail coming out of the back of his mask that's suffering from Dilbert's tie syndrome by defying gravity. Of course, this brings up the question of why the heck these two are even still in costumes if they were in custody. Starbright asks if there's any sign of Youngblood, to which Deadlock replies, the mere mention of that name boils my blood. Oh no, my blood! Help me, my friends! I'm vaguely Russian and my blood is boiling! Starbright tells him to keep it in check. Keep what in check? And that their plan depends on it. Gage gasps and calls out, 4 o'clock! 4 o'clock! They're here! They're here! They're here! Everybody hide so we can yell surprise! 3 arrows hit the ground. Okay, Shaft can kill a guy standing 100 feet away with a pen using his free hand, but he can't hit a couple of guys with a bow and arrow? Okay, admittedly his bow doesn't have any string, as indicated by the cover in a page that's coming up, but still. And here's the moment you've all been waiting for, folks. Die Hard flies down and smacks Strong Arm in the face with his crotch. I'm sure this wasn't what was supposed to be conveyed, but that's what we get, what with the bulging lines, the blood trail, and Die Hard body's foreshortening. Die Hard Cock proclaims, "This makes us even." And suddenly I understand fully what he did with his freedom the last time. And I also realize why they don't want any eyes if they're seeing stuff like that. Die Hard-On punches Strong Arm, this time with his fist, while shouting, "I've been waiting for this day, and this time you won't be as lucky." I don't think any of us want to be that lucky. And finally, we cut to a 2-page spread of the other members of Youngblood rushing out at the 4. Oh, and check out the cops in the lower left corner who have oversized legs and arms that for some reason are extended out away from them like stiff boards. Perhaps they're imitating what one of Liefeld's men would look like if they had muscles like that in real life. Whew, that issue lasted forever, didn't it? Well, at least it's over and... oh. I forgot. Yes, folks, in a rather bizarre bit of page construction, what we saw on the cover was actually the home team of Youngblood. And now, we have to flip the comic over and read it from the start so we can get another exciting tale. Yippee! Okay, in theory, this is a neat idea. 2 teams that alternate whenever there are missions on the home front or missions that take you away from the immediate area. The problem is that this can also be a radically stupid idea. In the hands of a good writer, having a huge team on a book can be great. Like the current JSA run, there are 25 team members, and single issues can spotlight individual heroes, or they can get some nice character moments and fight scenes, since we know how unique each one is. But Youngblood gives us 12 characters, but not all in the same story. Half the book is for one group, and half is for the other. It's a terrible idea to put both stories in the same book. It's possible to have 2 different teams with similar names running at the same time. But with Youngblood, the 2 teams mean that the missions are going to be really short and, again, little time for characterization. Backup features work because they're short supplements, a small story with a large story, but these are both of equal size and we didn't get any resolution on the home team of Youngblood. The story just stopped. It's especially bad to do this for a first issue. First issues are supposed to get the reader acclimated to these characters and their situations, give us some idea of what their deal is and why we should like them. But this book just has the characters thrust into one action situation to the next without any real chance for substance. Are the Youngblood a government organization? Are they the world's only superhero? Just tell us! Anyway, with all that in mind, let's dig into Youngblood number 1. Again. The cover on the back is a little better off than the home teams, with a bit more uniqueness to the characters and even some symbols for them. The colors don't seem as blended. Inside, we have yet another cardboard profile box, this one for the home team's leader, Shaft. Apparently, he's an experienced FBI agent who was chosen to replace an unseen character named Battlestone as leader of Youngblood. Say, Rob, why not have an origin story for your entirely new universe and characters, eh? No? Fine. It says that his weapon of choice is a specially crafted bow and arrow, which makes me think it must be special if it doesn't have a string. We begin with 6 television screens displaying a news report. I'm reluctant to call it talking heads, though, since every time a person is on the screen, they look like they're sleeping. Yes, not only do they have their eyes tightly shut, but their mouths are clamped firmly down, even though there are both speech bubbles and caption boxes that indicate that people should be talking. The speech bubble for the news announcer doesn't even have an arrow connecting it to him. For all we know, they're just putting Bob Squarebody there on the screen while he took some NyQuil and someone else is trying to make it look like they're actually talking. Superhero books can be great inspirations. Like right now, this is inspiring me to sleep too. Apparently the situation as they describe it is how a radical leader of a terrorist group named Saddam Hussein, that's Hassan Hussein, who is also sleeping by the way, has taken control of several Israeli territories. The president is sending in a specialized task force to deal with it. We switch to a live feed from a reporter on the field, and despite the fact that his mouth is actually open, this reporter's eyes are also just as shut as the others, indicating he must be unconscious too. Let's focus on one of these Youngblood dorks. Combat. Look at this guy, a giant tuning fork on his head, and a helmet that I'm sure in no way is meant to resemble Magneto's from the X-Men. And he's also got this huge pink gun that was probably supposed to look badass, but instead makes him look like he's wielding a giant frosting dispenser. To make matters worse, while the other members of Youngblood are leaping down from helicopters in relatively the same direction, Pinky the gold salad fork here is dropping down, facing the wrong way, plus scrunching his body as if he were sitting on a toilet. Physics! On the next page, Combat's gun is like 3 times smaller than it was in the previous one. Continuity? What's that? He announces shocked that there were more than what the briefing said there would be. Cougar, who is of course not like Wolverine at all, responds thusly. Got more toy soldiers to play with. War's just a game to you? Yup, otherwise this wouldn't be fun, Coog. I gotta admit, this gets me pumped! And suddenly we're in a Jane Fonda video. Well, that actually would explain why all of these losers are so muscle-bound. The de facto team leader, Sentinel, who is obviously not Iron Man, explains that this is only the first wave and that it's revealed that Combat wasn't paying attention during the briefing. Oh, and his gun is turned into another size, this time about 2/3 of the original size. Let's see. He doesn't pay attention to briefings, he has a size-changing gun, he's got to be uncomfortable to be within an elevator due to his size, and he treats war like a game. The next generation of heroes, ladies and gentlemen! Seriously, who the hell would find this compelling? Dude, I got like 3 copies of Youngblood number 1, man! And like 4 copies of Youngblood number 0! That's like a number 1 issue! Only it's a 0! That means it's like 0 times cooler! Wait. We catch up with the other members of the away team. Sci-Fire just kind of floats on the air alongside Riptide, who is herself riding on a wave of water. He cleverly quips, I should have bought this land. I've always wanted beachfront property, babe. Riptide, echoing the sentiments of every human being on the planet, responds, Shut up, Sci-Fire! Following along is the other team strongman, Brahma, and he, Oh my god! Get away from his mouth! It's a black hole! He complains, These soldiers are worse than flies. You get a lot of flies in your HQ, or are you actually a cow? They close in on their target, a small building without much security, to help secure Saddam, or Hassan's location. The group leaps in close to the building, only to be stopped by an energy field. Sci-Fire is fine, however, and he creepily exclaims that he could take out Hassan from the States. The energy field doesn't affect him, and he looks up at the camera, stating actually quite frighteningly with his lack of eyes that he wanted to do this personally. Just give me a second to figure out where you actually are. Meanwhile, Combat and Cougar have suddenly engaged with other high-tech robots, and you know what? I don't care about any of this, so let's skip to the end. We cut back to Sci-Fire and Kusain, who's pleading for his life. To make Sci-Fire even more unpleasant, he proclaims, "I actually admire what you've done here in this backwards country. It's just that mine pays me more." The next generation of heroes! Sci-Fire gives a little psychic attack to Kusain's brain, and much to the surprise of every reader of the book, we get a close-up shot of Kusain's eye. Wow, it actually exists! But Kusain holds his head in pain while Sci-Fire says that he does this kind of stuff for free. Then why was he talking about how he's paid better in the USA? Allowing Kusain's head to blow up off-panel. Charming. Combat and Cougar enter, saying with rather mild annoyance, "He did it again!" The other members of Youngblood wake up and also express their eye-rolling disappointment over the fact that he killed him. Brahma just stares at the body as if Gary Coleman had slapped him in the face, while Riptide sums it up with an irritated, "Oh, way to go! Brilliant!" with about the same amount of enthusiasm as you would when you forgot to put gas in the car. Iron Man, or Sentinel, says it's time to leave and they should call the cleanup crew. And our comic ends with a shot of US Today, saying that Kusain's terror ended in suicide. The newsprint says that he apparently unpinned a grenade in his mouth and that a suicide note was found nearby. Our heroes, ladies and gentlemen! They're murderers, liars, and they support other killers! Isn't it just the stuff of legends? This comic sucks. The art is bad, the writing is bad, it's just bad all around. Where were we? Oh, right, let's dig into Youngblood number 2.
Youngblood! 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 Youngblood!
Oh, Liefeld, how I have missed thee! Amidst all the various bland covers of Ultimates 3, or the "Hey, it's just my face" cover of Pit, we've really been missing out on just a stupid, poorly drawn cover, and you deliver the goods. Or rather the awfuls in this case. Like before, we have 2 covers, though this time we don't have the idiotic flip the book over for the other half of the story. No, this time we just have an idiotic backup story for the flipping. Introducing Shadowhawk! Hey Rob, it's only the 2nd issue. Maybe you want to make us give a crap about the characters you already have before you introduce Wolverine knockoff number 79, okay? And really, try to extend your arms back like that and see how long it takes for you to hurt yourself. And the other cover just hurts the eyes. Random wavy lines everywhere. Most of the characters are in this dizzying green shade that contrasts with the rest of the page. Oh, and here we introduce this loser. A Prophet Cometh. What's really funny is that looking at him with the swords and its stupid wrestling helmet, he actually looks like a ripoff of one of Rob's own characters named Shatterstar. And let's not forget that Rob believes that the human anatomy is basically broken up into various solid chunks of roasted ham, wherein your thighs are wider than your head. And where the hell are they standing? It's like they're trapped in some kind of lava bubble bath, and Prophet there can just hover above it while some of them are knee-deep while others are crouching in it. When we last left our protagonists, the home team of Youngblood had successfully done, well, nothing other than whine and bitch to each other. The away team of Youngblood had successfully assassinated a Middle Eastern dictator and then covered up their murder. The next generation of heroes, ladies and gentlemen! We open to a prologue, because I'm sure Youngblood really needs a friggin' prologue. Our location? Otherwhere. Huh. You know, Rob, if you can't be bothered to make a place up, don't even bother. I didn't even care where these losers were, but since you brought it up, now it just makes you look even stupider. Now, at first glance, you might think these morons are just Youngblood again, but no! This is in fact an entirely different team called the Berserkers. They just happen to look exactly like the Youngblood. Why, there's Badrock up there, Shaft shooting some gun, Vogue on the lower left, and of course Wolverine knockoff number 134. All this just further illustrates that Rob Liefeld, even with his own new universe and continuity, had to rip off himself for ideas. Oh, and this is all dedicated to Jack Kirby, as if Liefeld was anywhere near the same league as Jack Kirby. Anyway, they're led by Cross, who says they have to reach Kirby in time. Huh. Dedicated to Jack Kirby, and there's a character named Kirby. Anyway, Otherwhere is made up of metal hallways that are full of faceless goons that decide that physics are for dorks and just kind of float around without regard to where anything is. The Wolverine knockoff named Wildmane has hair twice as big as his head. This man single-handedly keeps a company that makes hair gel afloat with that do. Also, the guy must be a shapeshifter or something because he keeps growing or getting smaller. Look at this, suddenly he's 3 times as big as Cross. In the previous page, he was hunched over and looked like the same size. Perspective? Foreshortening? These are fruits Liefeld can only dream of. The Death Squad has never proven a match for Wildmane. Or for Battleaxe! Yeah, right, Battleaxe. Don't you mean Great Knife? Anyway, tossing aside the goons, they meet Kirby. And yes, Kirby is exactly what you think he is. Jack Kirby, cigar-chomping and all, as an over-muscled, pouch-sporting, huge, gun-wielding Liefeld monstrosity. Rob, Jack Kirby helped invent the Fantastic Four. He helped create Captain America. He invented the new gods. This isn't a tribute, it's a mockery of the man and his work. You fail! But as usual, it's up to the little guy to mop the mess up. Where's Dark Angel? We lost him. Just one more reason to nail Darkthorn. Naturally, Dark Angel is spelled with a C instead of a K, and Darkthorn with 2 N's, and neither name is separated by spaces. Because poor literacy is cool. Anyway, the gang of dumbasses charges out to attack people whose names I've already forgotten so they can take on a Darkseid ripoff. And before anyone wants to call me on the "but Darkseid is spelled incorrectly too" thing with Jack Kirby, I would remind you that the new gods are, well, gods, and Kirby wanted a genuine good versus evil feel out of them. He didn't spell Darkseid like that simply to be extreme, or cool, or any other 90s cliche. I'd actually be more inclined to cut the misspelling some slack if they weren't done simply because spelling things normally wouldn't have been hardcore enough. Speaking of Darkseid, here's the Darkseid ripoff, Darkthorn. He's got the same bullet-shaped head as Darkseid, he stands in the same pose, and is all mysterious and restrained and crap. And what a poorly designed ripoff, too. Darkseid was genuinely reflected in his namesake, with dark blue, gray, and black tones to him. So how is Darkthorn dressed in reflection of his character? In purple, red, light blue, and gold. Or maybe this is just his Mardi Gras costume, I don't know. Oh, but to really emphasize the goofy here, he has, of course, huge shoulder pads, a golden helmet with little wings on the side, and feet that are smaller than his head. Yeah, I'm really terrified of the guy who probably could be defeated by just shoving him hard enough. Oh, and one more note about Liefeld's artwork. For a guy who hates it when other writers make his characters into homosexuals, he seems to spend an awful lot of time outlining and putting little lines around to emphasize crotches. Just saying. But enough of that, I guess the prologue must be over without really learning anything interesting, because we now cut to a splash page of this guy's face and the title Prophecy along the top. According to the dialogue captions, old Green Eyes here is named Prophet, and he's in a cryogenic chamber. His name is Prophet, Jonathan Taylor Prophet, and by our calculations, he's at least 80 years old. Oh yeah, cryogenic chambers were all the rage back in the 1920s. The idea was to go to a speakeasy, get drunk, get in a cryo chamber, and sleep off that hangover. And as if I didn't have enough reason to hate this garbage, we then get a 2-page spread that has to be flipped on its side in order to be read properly. And again I must ask, what the hell is it about this sequence that required this? In fact, it's all the worse because it's been put like this. Everybody's been shoved in there to fit the panel restrictions, and it just looks like the room they're in is too cramped to fit everybody. What the hell is Riptide even doing? She's not looking at the cryogenic chamber, she's just shoving her chest out and staring at the reader. Then again, I'm not sure how anyone can see anything when nobody has any eyes! And now it's time for some exposition, courtesy of the telepathic scientists, since Rob couldn't be bothered to draw stems for his word balloons to connect them to who was speaking. He is the product of a groundbreaking biogenetic experiment conducted under the supervision of Dr. Garnet Wells sometime around the Second World War. Garnet Wells, the mad scientist?
I'm not mad, just angry.
The telepathic scientists continue with purple text boxes. Dr. Wells began his experiments in 1937 despite ridicule from his fellow colleagues that he was mad. Damn it, Wells, I don't care what the formula says. Peanut butter and chocolate simply don't go together. He hired the downtrodden and the indigent to submit to his controversial experiments. Someday I shall prove to the world that Wonder Bros should shoot laser beams! It was rumored that Dr. Wells was using equipment and technology far beyond the capabilities and limitations of his time. Damn you, Adobe Premiere! Why did you crash again? He developed John Prophet's natural athletic abilities beyond normal capabilities, enabling him to perform superhuman feats such as enhanced stamina, strength, and speed. He could stand endlessly for hours with his chest puffed out. Eventually, Wells outfitted Prophet with an outlandish uniform. It wasn't outlandish, it was fabulous! And equipped him with weapons far beyond the limits of even today's science. Excellent! The Twinkie cannon is complete! The history lesson finishes with the scientist finally talking and explaining that Wells disappeared during the war. Youngblood's task is to ensure the transport of Prophet back to the States for further experimentation. So, let's see if we've got this straight. In issue 1, the team invaded a foreign power and blew the head off a dictator. In issue 2, they're delivery boys. Do you get the feeling that Liefeld was just winging it? I will do my job as an escort for this man's property, but I loathe the fact his work will be exploited and exposed. Of course, it will be under the blanket of betterment for mankind. Ha! Ooh, that must sting getting a lecture from Cougar, aka Wolverine knockoff number 47. Combat says that on his planet, they do no less than get him there. Yeah, remember Combat? He was the dork in issue 1 with the pink frosting gun as his weapon who thought war was a game. Apparently between issues 1 and 2, Rob gave him an alien warrior culture shtick. Cougar moves in closer and notices that there's some sort of timer on, I don't know, his crotch, I guess, that nobody noticed before and that it's ticking away. Cougar looks down for more information and then, it explodes, I guess. I wonder why the timer was set for 80 years in the future. Anywho, Prophet walks out and we see that his hands are quite stumpy, almost as if the artist didn't know how to draw fists and wrists in proportion to the ridiculously huge arms he was sporting. Oh, and once again, 2-page spread that I have to flip over. Maybe that wasn't the right button to push. Aye, it appears we have awakened the sleeper. Crap, you're really gonna make me do it, Combat?
Father, the sleeper has awakened!
Long live the fighters! Cougar, being the most rock stupid of this bunch, instantly attacks Prophet even though all he's doing is just standing there. Prophet mistakes Youngblood for some group called Disciples or something. While Combat manages to put up a good fight, Prophet keeps rejuvenating during it all. However, we also learn that witty repartee is not Combat's strong suit. From unconsciousness you came, and, if necessary, to unconsciousness you shall return. From artistically disinclined and dialogue challenged this graphic text came, to artistically disinclined and... yeah, you get the idea. Awkward dialogue is awkward. Also, this fight scene further shows that while Rob may be capable of drawing people in poses, may be capable, mind you, he really sucks when it comes to having a fight scene make sense. Take, for instance, the flow of this fight. Combat strikes Prophet twice. Okay, makes sense. Then Combat, I guess, strikes again. Or something. His bow staff is glowing anyway. Then Prophet grabs Combat and hurls him against the wall by the side. Then Prophet is looking down. Then he's suddenly floating in the air as if he was sitting with his legs outstretched while Combat's on the ground doing aerobics. What the hell is this? No, really, I want to know. What the hell am I looking at? The dialogue balloon has Prophet exclaiming oof at the end of a sentence. Did he get kicked? Did he realize how uncomfortable his stance is? Is he just confused with the yellow bars in the background? And then, just to compound matters, suddenly Prophet's standing up and punching straight up with Combat going flying while there are dizzying lines all converging on his fist. This is not quite like Die Hard hitting someone with his crotch, but it's up there. Oh, and a minor detail that just serves to illustrate Rob's laziness, the gauntlet that Prophet is wearing is clearly supposed to be 3 segments, all connected together, but instead in this panel it's 2 segments and layered. Not Iron Man tells Riptide to summon up some water and she blasts Prophet back enough for Brahma to— ah! Brahma's mouth! Oh god, Brahma's gonna eat me! Brahma punches Prophet with enough force to snap his neck, but hey, apparently in the world of Youngblood, with spines made out of rope and body muscle taking up 90% of flesh, what's something like a snapped neck? All of a sudden, the disciples themselves turn up. Turns out they're big robot things. So yeah, I can see why Prophet mistook Youngblood for them. Prophet tells the group that they're the harbingers of doom and are a threat to all humanity. We are the disciples of doom. Resistance is futile. You will be assimilated. Resistance is futile. Really, Rob? Really? You're really ripping off the Borg from Star Trek? Yeah, you can go to hell. And so the story itself ends with a splash page of the Berserks showing up out of nowhere with faux Kirby leading the charge. What a crock. As if that wasn't enough to piss me off, the friggin' thing is another 2-page spread that I have to turn. That's like 3 of them in this stupid comic. We now head to the backup story, which, shockingly enough, has yet another cover within the pages itself. And here we see the cover, with gigantic Shadowhawk's head and shoulders next to a bunch of buildings. Guys, I don't think we were looking at the right blueprints for Freedom Tower. Instead of a prologue, we get a prelude, because that sounds so much cooler than prologue. Last night, you threw down the paper in disgust. They stopped printing Hagar the Horrible? Those sons of bitches! Blah, 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 the system has failed, blah, 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 you are the knight, blah, blah, blah. Holy crap, you broke that guy's spine! This one, at least, will never threaten an innocent man again, no matter what the court decides. See, I warned you Batman's war against rock and roll would lead to this, but no one believed me! You are Shadowhawk, and you are taking back the night. Because the night belongs to lovers. This comic sucks. Majorly sucks. The art sucks. The writing sucks. Everything about it sucks. Welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn. Well, it's that time of year again, the time where we look back at when I first started doing text reviews a few years back that eventually led to this show. It's time for Youngblood again! In the last 2 Youngblood comics, we've seen a bunch of steroid-abusing jerks pretend that a plot is happening, when, of course, nothing of the sort has been. The home team of Youngblood dealt with their own bickering while facing off against a bunch of supervillains we know nothing about. The away team went off to a foreign nation and assassinated a guy, then for some reason in issue 2 they were handling the transportation of a guy named Prophet stuck in cryogenic suspension. When the guy woke up from his cryo-sleep, he was attacked by guys who wanted to rip off the Borg from Star Trek. Oh yeah, and there was also this guy who was supposed to be an homage to Jack Kirby, but really just came off like all of Liefeld's characters, which wasn't made any easier since the team Kirby was leading was pretty much just another team exactly like Youngblood, right down to the character designs. So let's dig into Youngblood number 3 and watch this series degrade in quality with each passing issue. You know, there's nothing quite like the refreshing crappiness of a Youngblood cover. It's never something I can say is okay or give any praise for. No, this is the best kind of cover for this show. It is absolute garbage. We have Shaft, Die Hard, and Chapel shoved into the cover and taking up as much room as possible, even to the point where they're partially obscuring the Youngblood logo. Actually, the one surprising thing about this cover is Shaft's sword. Rob Liefeld has a reputation when it comes to drawing swords, that he can't draw them straight on, so seeing this is actually pretty impressive. Though the fact that Shaft is not holding the sword properly kind of makes it lose points. We open to Prophet slouching over like a hunchback while blood leaks out of his massive biceps and face. Approximately 19 minutes have passed since this struggle began. Certainly feels that way, although this is only the first page. The disciples have overwhelmed me. Systematically, they have wiped our numbers out. They are everything I was told they would be. And more. Does someone want to get around to telling us everything they are? On the next page, Prophet decides to moon us while making his hands glow. This once again demonstrates Rob's inability to tell a story sequentially, particularly when it comes to fight scenes. Okay, we have this charge-up attack, but then in the next panel, he's punching a robot, no special glow around his hands, and I can't even begin to tell you what the hell it is he's hitting. Look at this thing. Can anyone tell if this thing is backwards or forwards after he punches it? Then we get a panel of his face, then one of him in a bright light, then him holding up one of the attackers, then him punching another one. If this was a montage, this would be fine, but it's not! This fight scene is supposed to be taking place in real time. The panels have to flow from one to the next. If you cut away to something, sure, then you can have whatever pose you want in the next panel, but that's not happening here! Prophet talks about the others who fought valiantly beside him, despite the fact that he wrongly thought they were foes when he first woke up. He doesn't even know who any of them are. And you know what? Neither do I! This is the third issue of Youngblood, and I can't even remember who half of these people are! The first issue has been the only issue to actually be about these characters, and maybe issue 0 was about them too, but I haven't read that one. Issues 2 and 3 are about Prophet and a bunch of other people who aren't Youngblood! The cast is already huge by most team book standards, and yet here we are, giving the focus to people who aren't main characters, yet we've seen more backstory on them than the whole of Youngblood itself. I can't even remember the names of half of these people. I need to get action figures to remind myself who the hell they are! We cut to the Pentagon in Washington, D.C., where Badrock and Shaft are walking down a corridor with some loser wearing a pink polka-dotted shirt. In what universe does any human being wear this outfit? Polka dots, suspenders, and a bow tie? And don't get me wrong, bow ties are cool. But not one combined with polka dots and visible suspenders, and what the hell is with this guy's hair? This person is named Timer, and he's apparently Shaft's secretary or something. I feel good that that's his name, since like last issue, this one's dedicated to an actual comic creator, as opposed to the man who gave us this garbage. Respectfully dedicated to the memory of Joe Shuster. I was worried at first that Timer there was supposed to be the Joe Shuster stand-in, though frankly, be prepared if we suddenly have a new character appear named Schuster that has muscles 10 inches across and wields massive guns, just like every other Youngblood character. Timer is telling Shaft about his new action figure line, since apparently he's popular. Why? Evidently, his toy has 4 variant figures. Geez, isn't that going a little too far? They paid millions for the license alone. Oh good, it's not enough to misspell people's names, now they have to misspell real words. Swap the S and the C in license and you've got yourself a whole new word. Because poor literacy is for people who can't spell. The 3 suddenly arrive at the cell of Strongarm, that one criminal from back in issue 1. Wait, why the hell are they keeping him at the Pentagon? Isn't that a disaster just waiting to happen? Put him in a freaking prison! And don't tell me he's too strong for a normal prison. Clearly they had to build this one specially suited to hold him. This scene is pointless too. All it establishes is that Strongarm is pissed at Shaft for putting him in the cell. What, a villain is angry at a hero? What other bold new concepts shall the next generation of heroes present us with? While he keeps making pointless threats, the 3 walk off, passing by a guard. Here we see the real problem with Youngblood's disease, since their vision is so poor now that they can't tell that the security guard is actually this guy in an armored suit and Power Rangers helmet. We cut to Earth orbit, where a few Klingon birds of prey, alien spaceships, are hanging in orbit. These are members of Combat's race. Yes, Combat, that guy from the away team of Youngblood that apparently was an alien with a warrior culture shtick. Just like Klingons. If that description wasn't good enough, he was the guy with the huge pink gun. The ships are looking for Combat, and wow, the similarities with Klingons end here. Why? Well, Klingons actually look like warriors. Metal armor, a wide variety of weapons. These guys? Tell me, at what point did this race decide, our line of honorable warriors will wear skin-tight sky blue spandex with crimson highlights, big golden shoulder pads, and tusks on our stomachs? In fact, this looks so undignified and unwarrior-like that I need to inject this with a fresh bit of real Klingons.
Your blood will taint the way to the future.
Anyway, this guy, an admiral, says he's personally trained Combat and doesn't believe that he's dead. However, he's interrupted by an ambassador of— Stop! What the hell is that? Let's ignore the bizarre proportions on this woman. Since it's Liefeld, there isn't a single person in this comic that looks normal. But what the hell is up with her head? Combat deserves no honor. He is a traitor and he will die in disgrace. The identity of the traitor has yet to be determined. No, I'm sorry, but I can't ignore it. What is that? What are those huge pointy things coming up from her face? Is everyone in her species like that? Why would evolution ever produce a species like that? And does no one notice that her head is on fire? No wonder she looks so pissed off. Her head is on fire and no one's trying to put it out. Anyway, the two exposit that Combat has apparently betrayed their emperor, and he apparently fled to Earth, trading alien technology for sanctuary. They're also looking for someone else who was with him called the Acurin, but the ambassador is convinced of Combat's guilt while the admiral believes Combat is innocent. Back with Youngblood, Shaft is holding a press conference, and with his own stupid hairstyle, he too looks like his head is on fire. The reporter asks him about the death of the Saddam Hussein stand-in, but he denies any involvement, that Youngblood doesn't function as assassins. And I know you may have forgotten, because it was 2 years ago and all, but yeah, in fact, they did kill the Saddam Hussein stand-in. Well, okay, the one psychic guy did it, but they covered it up. So yeah, the next generation of heroes. Lying, assassinating, poorly drawn morons who can't actually fight anybody and need some random guest character to do it for them. The reporters start rapidly asking questions about other Image Comics characters at the time, like Savage Dragon and Shadowhawk. Oh look, there's our tribute to Joe Shuster, Clark Kent in what I think is supposed to be Lois Lane, but with a terrible haircut and collagen-injected lips. Was it just Rob Liefeld's dream to become a hairstylist, but he got rejected and ended up as a comic book artist? Because if that's the case, it would make far too much sense. As the group leaves the conference, we get another spelling error, misspelling brief as brafe. This is just starting to get sad. Someone yells out to Shaft that there's a jailbreak in progress at the Pentagon. Gee, suddenly having a big prison underneath the Department of Defense seems like a really bad idea. We cut to the Pentagon where, oh come on! Maybe using Ninja Turtles logic, I could believe that a simple helmet behind the guard uniform would have disguised this woman from sight, but look at the enormous Y on her face! Those would have gone up past the guard cap! Are you seriously telling me that none of the three noticed that? On a 2-page spread, we see Chapel, Shaft, and Badrock suddenly bursting through a glass window to confront the woman. A few thoughts come to mind with this scene. 1. Shaft's bow still has no bowstring. 2. I did not know that the vault where they're keeping Strong Arm had a nice big glass window that someone could drive their motorcycle through. Otherwise, we have to believe that Chapel drove that stupid purple bike through the halls of the Pentagon before coming up on this window that he could dramatically crash through. 3. Mila Jovovich did the motorcycle through glass thing a hell of a lot better than you, Chapel. The woman in the armor catches Shaft's arrows without a problem. By the way, 17 pages in, and I don't think we've had a single panel that had any actual backgrounds until this one. A brick wall. Which would not make much sense for what's supposed to be a high-security vault underneath the flippin' Pentagon. Shaft and the woman exchange banter, just making me wonder why the hell Chapel hasn't started shooting the woman, since I doubt she can catch bullets as effectively. However, instead of something making sense, we have something completely out of left field. Ninjas! Normally I would showcase some ninja-style dancing here, but for some reason we can't find him. Instead, we have some commentary on this fight from another ninja.
Greetings, Kung Tai Ted here. When you're a superhero who has been ambushed by a Kamen Rider wannabe and her army of ninjas, it's natural for you to be taken by surprise. You may also feel the desire to narrate about what they're doing to you, like how they're supposedly hitting you in the ribs, despite the fact that it most clearly is going for your armpit. Said ninjas may be dressed in white as opposed to the standard black, allowing them the true power of camouflage with drywall. The ninjas will attack your jaw with their knees, no doubt mocking your bizarre musculature with an impractical way of flying through the air. However, all you need to do is get their sword away from them. Taking their sword away will dishonor them to the point where they won't even commit seppuku on themselves, so please, be a good guy and do it for them. And then when you... Holy crap! Shaft, you're supposed to be the good guy, right? Because that just looks scary, my friend. This is Kung Tai Ted, reminding you that ninja clothes come in all colors of the rainbow, not just black and white.
Badrock also confronts some ninjas who are naturally dwarfed by his hugeness. Why does this high-security vault also have 20-foot ceilings?
That's it! I'm through holding back! It's time to cut loose!
Cutting loose, it seems, means to hit someone so hard that their neck snaps back and kills them.
Yabba dabba doom!
That had better not be his catchphrase. Chapel takes the more direct route, simply shooting all the ninjas. Well, can't fault the guy for efficiency, I guess. However, the ninjas were merely a distraction, while Purple Helmet Lady frees all the members of the 4 that the group had imprisoned. Chapel and Shaft fire on them, but only hit the one named Gage before the others teleport away. It does make me wonder where they shot him, though, since there are no arrows inside of him. But there's a big arc of branching blood coming out of his nose as he goes flying back. Did Chapel shoot a bullet into his nose? That's pretty impressive. Shaft interrogates the guy, but he refuses to say where the others escaped to. And so our comic ends with a 2-page horizontal spread of Die Hard just suddenly appearing out of nowhere and saying they've gotten an emergency signal from the away team, which is still fighting those whatever the hell they were from the beginning. Yeah, this pinup shot really required me to turn the comic on its side. There's no way this could have been done on 1 page.
Be here in 60 days as the excitement explodes.
Oh, gee willikers, I have to wait a whole 2 months to find out what happened! You know, Rob, it probably doesn't make your company look like it knows what it's doing if you can't even get out a book once a month!
As our teams unite against the forces of Darkthorn and the Disciples of Doom, as we use more sentence fragments...
This comic sucks! It is probably the worst issue of Youngblood so far, and that is saying something! Even after 3 issues, I still have no idea who any of these characters actually are. The artwork is atrocious, par for the course by now, but to add on top of everything else, we have real legitimate spelling errors, not just the standard misspellings of words to make them edgier. There's also a brief backup story in the standard image style of Flip the Comic Upside Down about another new character, Supreme, an unabashed Superman ripoff. I'd get into it like I did last time, but frankly, I don't want to look at any more of this artwork. What I will tell you, from secondhand knowledge, is that Alan Moore, yes, the Alan Moore behind Watchmen, Tom Strong, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, and more, actually wrote Supreme for a while and embraced the Superman ripoff concept by turning it into a book that was apparently entertaining and awesome, as much as it can be since it was still drawn by Liefeld. While I was in Reno, I picked up a whole bunch of Alan Moore's run on Supreme, but I still haven't had a chance to take a look at them to see for myself. However, I still feel I should offer more. At first I was going to look at the letters page like I did back in Doom's 4 #2, but seeing about 20 people praising the artwork and color caused my eyes to start bleeding. Instead, let's look at something a bit more visually rewarding. Sometime in 2008, sorry I can't be more specific, I don't know any details about this book other than the book itself, Image released a new edition of Youngblood in hardcover format, collecting the first 5 issues of the series. It's basically Youngblood remastered. The artwork itself is still as flawed and awful as it was originally, but the coloring has huge improvements. Redone with modern digital coloring techniques, the colors are brighter and make much more sense in areas. Sure, the alien warrior culture still has a pretty undignified uniform, but at least it's a consistent look to it. Red and gold instead of bright blue, crimson and gold. In other areas, though, it's kinda confusing. Those white ninjas from earlier are now purple. I guess purple is closer to black, but still. In addition, the pages have been reordered and all of the dialogue redone. That bizarre bit with Kirby and his gang of misfits, that's a prologue now instead of being shoved into issue 2 for no reason. Issue 1 now has the plots for both teams happening simultaneously as opposed to half of it all lumped together and the other half lumped together, helping the pacing of each story. Also, that double-page spread from the first issue that the home team ended on, we actually have dialogue there now. But I know all of you have a real question about this new edition. Does Die Hard still attack Strong Arm with his crotch? Oh my, yes! In fact, the only thing reworked from this image, besides for brightening up the colors on them, is changing the background from green, yellow, and white to orange and red. If you are morbidly curious, I'd recommend checking out this version as opposed to the originals, since it is a marked improvement over them. Hell, this one even comes with an introduction written by Mark Millar, whom you in the mainstream might know better as the guy who wrote Kick-Ass, but to me will always be the guy who wrote Superman Red Son. And it really shows how funny this guy can be, lavishly praising Liefeld's artwork and implying that naysayers of his artwork are just balding jerks who would criticize Jack Kirby back in his day. Now that is funny. Unless, of course, he's serious, in which case that would be very, very sad.
Youngblood. 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 Youngblood.
Hello and welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn. We here at Atop the Fourth Wall love anniversaries, probably because there's always so much crap and misery in the world that we feel we could use some celebrations. And that's why I celebrate the first review I ever wrote of Youngblood #1 back in February of 2007. Sure, nobody cares about the written reviews I did before videos, but I know how causality works, and if I hadn't started writing those reviews, I probably wouldn't have started doing the show. And that's why it's important for me to celebrate a really crappy book made by Rob Liefeld in the early 90s. I say the early 90s because while the first issue was released in 1992 only had 3 issues released. No, I don't mean one in each month of October, November, and December. I mean, the first issue came out in April, then the second July, and the third in August. Admittedly, the 0th issue, 0th, is that even a word? Came out in December of that year, and issue 0 after 3 issues have already hit, but that was it. To make it worse, issue 4 didn't come out until February of 1993. Where am I going with all this? Well, it's just I've seen a lot of praise for Youngblood coming from creators, and I really have to ask, what the hell book were they reading? Youngblood sucks. There's no tiptoeing around about this. It is awful. This is the 4th issue of this book, and what has happened so far? Pretty much jack all. There are at least 12 members of Youngblood, and aside from a few names, I couldn't tell you a damn thing about them. Their personalities, their backstories, hell, not even their real names for a few of them. And if that wasn't enough, there are actually more than just those 12. We have some previous team, we have this prophet guy, we have the villains. It's just a mess. And releasing each issue so far apart makes it easy to forget what the hell happened in the previous ones. Let's face it, comic books are easily consumable media, especially when they're a once-per-month kind of thing. You need to really make your book memorable to keep people interested. Mark Millar in the remastered Youngblood collection talked about how edgy Youngblood was, with books about celebrity superheroes, with endorsement deals and talk shows and crap. Maybe that's more explored in later issues, but it's sure as hell not going on in the first few issues. And what, superheroes treated as celebrities with, like, toys and crap? Yeah, Youngblood wasn't the first to do that by a long shot. And even then, it hasn't exactly been an integral part of the series. You know what has? Action scenes! Lots and lots of action scenes! Really bad action scenes. If you pay attention to my theme song's visuals, you'll note that one thing that has remained throughout all versions of it is the visual of Die Hard attacking somebody with their crotch. It's not just because it's poorly drawn, though that is a big part of it, but rather, if you see this, you've seen every Rob Liefeld action scene. Now, since a lot of you aren't comic book fans, let me try to explain this with an analogy to another niche market that more people care about. Wrestling, and in particular, our old pal, the Ultimate Warrior. I am not a wrestling fan. Any information I have on it comes from other people who care about wrestling.
Wrestle! Wrestle!
However, I have watched a documentary called The Self-Destruction of the Ultimate Warrior. I don't know how accurate it is because, again, not a wrestling fan, but they talk a lot in that documentary about the Ultimate Warrior's wrestling style. High-impact moves, big hits, big swings, colliding with the opponent, etc. In comic books, because all we see are individual panels and not things actually in motion, artists have to find other ways of conveying energy and motion, but in a still frame. Hell, the Marvel Guide to Drawing Comics actually tells people that it's more exciting and more energetic if characters are drawn with their legs farther apart. This is exciting! And they're not exactly wrong, but bringing this back to my point, Rob Liefeld's artwork is exactly like the Ultimate Warrior's wrestling. It's all about big, high-impact punches and gestures. It's good sometimes, but when every fight is like this, it gets dull quickly. Anyone who actually fights like this is going to get exhausted pretty quickly, and it's exhausting for readers who are trying to get into the moment. Let's compare again. Return of the Jedi features Luke, angry and adrenaline-fueled, just wailing on Darth Vader at the end. It's only as exciting as it is because it built up to that moment, and he's doing it because he's so emotional at that point. It complements the character. Not so much Rob Liefeld fights, where everyone looks pissed off 24/7 and is always scowling and straining themselves as if they're constipated. And yet, the man still gets work! At the time of this video's release, one more book that Liefeld was on got cancelled. And DC turned right around and put him in a creative position on 3 other books. We live in a strange, strange world. So let's dig into Youngblood number 4 and maybe we'll see what the hell DC executives see in this junk. The cover depicts a group of Youngblood members standing around and looking angry. Oh wait, I'm sorry, that was the cover to issue 3. Let's try again. The cover depicts a group of Youngblood members standing around and looking angry. We open in the air over Berlin. Die Hard, personal log entry. Location, Berlin, Germany. Time, 10 hours later. Hey, what time is it? 10 hours later o'clock. They're approaching the laboratory from previous issues where that Prophet guy was thawed and the Borg ripoffs were fighting. Can't we just park somewhere nearby, catch a shuttle? Try as he might, Bedrock can't lighten the mood. Come to think of it, I don't think I've seen a single one of these characters smiling. Ever. Did I mention I'm scared of heights? Can't you tell how scared I am? Youngblood units consist of only the finest super operatives. When an entire team goes down, it's no laughing matter. I'll tell you that there is something to laugh about though, and once again it involves Die Hard's naughty areas. Look at the way he's holding his hands behind his back and where his hands are located. We really should not be seeing the back of his hands like this unless he was doing something very inappropriate for a mission of this seriousness. Despite Bedrock's earlier complaints, he happily leaps out of the plane while yelling out his "Yabba Dabba Doom" catchphrase. I can't imagine why Rob ever had to change his name to Badrock. Half the lab has already been destroyed. Another broken window shouldn't bother anyone. Wait, what? You're going through a window that's already broken. And where's all that debris around you coming from? Die Hard goes in first, deciding to save crotch-based attacks for something other than the cyborg robot whatever thingies he's fighting. Bedrock. It's easy to forget that inside that stony exterior, he's just a kid. He carries himself like an old pro. He's a prankster at heart, but when it's time to get down to business, he's one of the best. You can tell he's a pro by the way he... scowls? Stands there? The two run into Prophet, who's in really bad shape. I mean, look at him. He's like a Stretch Armstrong doll that's been pulled one too many times, with his arms completely straight with no elbows, and his poor thighs that are 3 times as long as his calves, and... oh, wait, that's just the art. He tells the two that he figures they're with the missing Youngblood members, and that he has to fight the Disciples. Disciples? Who or what? There is no time for talk, only action! Oh, for the love of crap, please! There is time for talk! No more action! Can we please get an explanation for what the hell is going on? This Prophet is quite a character. You say that as if he has a character. I'm still waiting for that to appear. The two join Prophet in fighting off the Disciples. Yeah, I completely forgot that's what they were called. Do you see what I mean about this comic? Die Hard thinks that it's time to activate his personal arsenal. I motion for the disc attached to my back. This is the motion for that. I sure hope it doesn't look silly or really uncomfortable. In seconds, the disc is transformed into my own personal battle shield. Huh, red, white, and blue guy with a shield. Die Hard is clearly a ripoff of Archie Comics' The Shield. Die Hard's shield also seems to change shape since it goes from being oval in this panel to being perfectly round in the next one. Oh, and by the by, if you think that's just a coincidence, Die Hard then throws the shield at one of the Disciples and it instantly returns to his hands. Subtle. State-of-the-art computer guidance system returns it instantly to my hands. So it's totally not like any other character's shield. It's all computers and stuff. It's totally different. Shut up! As usual, Bedrock dishes out his own form of punishment. Yes, Bedrock has a very unique fighting style. Punching the enemy. So unique. Shaft and Chapel arrive and say that the Disciples are everywhere in the lab. His name is John Prophet. Miss Jackson if you're nasty. He claims to have fought alongside Sentinel and the away team against the Disciples. Prophets and Disciples, huh? Sounds like the biblical equivalent of Armageddon to me. And unfortunately, we don't have Jesus, Christian martial artist, handy. Actually, what he just said doesn't even make any sense. I don't recall the Disciples being on hand in the Book of Revelations. I don't know, maybe I haven't read it in a while. Anyway, Shaft finally just demands to know what's going on, and we finally get some plot exposition. The Disciples are a product of futuristic science. Neither they nor I are supposed to be here in this time or in this place. I was designed by Dr. Garnet Wells to combat them in their many forms. Yes, they have many forms, like big and bigger. He says that they're traveling back in time via teleportation device called a crash tunnel, and that one such crash tunnel is underneath the building they're in. Not sure how the hell he knows that, but hey, at least we have something to go on. Sort of. Why are they traveling back in time? And what the hell does Prophet mean he's not supposed to be here? The backstory in issue 2 was that a mad scientist enhanced a guy and put him in that stupid-looking boxing headgear thing. How is that thing even staying on? Is it just clinging really, really hard to his head? Is that why he's always gritting his teeth? Anyway, he was put in cryogenic suspension. He's not from the future. But whatever. He says that if they don't close the tunnel, the Disciples will just keep pouring out. As such, Shaft sends Die Hard down to locate the tunnel. Sending me into the tunnel was a good call. I'm expendable. If something happens to me, Project Born Again will just issue a new model. I'm under warranty for 5 years. After that, you can trade me in for the newest model at half the price. Get your Die Hard now! Bedrock, follow Die Hard! I have decided that you are expendable too. Vogue arrives with Sentinel, the Iron Man guy from the away team. He's still alive, but his Youngblood's disease has entered stage 2. The eyes completely vanish, leaving nothing but a black void! Vogue says that Photon, the green flame-haired guy, found the other away team members and is still fighting more Disciples. Sentinel lays some exposition on us that there are some other characters called Berserkers who are resistance fighters that follow the Disciples through the gateway, and that the Disciples are after Prophet. Why? Who is he? Some sort of futuristic super soldier specifically designed to combat the Disciples. And that was exposition given to us by Prophet only 2 pages ago, so that was useless filler. Bedrock and Die Hard enter the tunnel because, why the hell not, I guess, and Die Hard figures it's some kind of wormhole that leads to another place or time. They arrive someplace where the Darkseid ripoff from a few issues ago, Darkthorn, is waiting for them. Congratulations, you have successfully breached the passageway that joins our 2 worlds. Here's a coupon for a free yogurt at the concession stand. This is the planet Decay. I am Darkthorn, its ruler. And thanks for the poor literacy there, Rob. No, I don't mean the extra N in Darkthorn, I already talked about that. I mean the misspelling of its. With the way it's written here, he's saying, I am Darkthorn, it is ruler. And wait, they're from another planet? I thought they were from the future. Your trespass here is not welcome, which is why I congratulated you when you arrived. The two heroes quickly strain their neck muscles and attack, demanding Darkthorn and Orn stop sending the disciples through. Dark Thermometer is not impressed and, does something to Die Hard that makes his blood come out in a big long trail of carnage symbiote? Blood does not work like this. Dark Thong tells Bedrock he doesn't stand a chance, and we cut back to the lab, where the remaining Youngblood members, along with Prophet, gather outside the portal. They think the two have been gone for too long and decide to go in, but all of a sudden, Dark Thespian emerges. There will be no more disciples. If the struggle continues, it will not be against those who serve my cause. It will be against yourselves! And so our comic ends with the reveal that Bedrock has joined forces with Darkthorpe. Dun dun dun! Who the hell buys this for even a second? And even if they did, who cares at this point? Oh, and the best part? To be concluded in Brigade number 4. 4 issues in, and they can't even complete their storyline in their own book. This comic sucks! Oh, but of course, we're not done yet. Like previous issues, they decided to shove in an extra story. This time, a prologue for Pit. You remember Pit, right? That completely boring comic I reviewed at the start of 2010? The one whose cover boasted that it was the rippin' first issue? Because rippin' is suddenly an adjective that means cool. I don't think the 90s were ever that stupid. And that, dude, is why you are totally not rippin'! I'm gonna do this really quickly because, frankly, it's about as interesting as it sounds. Some characters are in space. Pitt is a prisoner and the ship is carrying him to a space station. They claim that Pitt can't escape. ZOMG! Pitt has escaped! Cut to Earth on a subway train. A gang is hassling a woman. A child is with his grandfather. It's skanks like you that make my bulbous naughty parts all tingly. Human beings, even street thugs, do not talk like that. The grandfather tries to intervene. He fails. The kid intervenes, hitting the thug with a hockey stick so hard it breaks it in half. Damn strong for such a little kid. He fails. Pitt teleports into the subway car. The thugs take one look at a naked, clawed, over-muscled alien, and their first idea is, let's try to fight it. You can guess what happens next. And nothing of value was lost. Pitt hands the kid back the broken hockey stick and says he's a good fighter, then walks away. I'd call that a natural hat trick. Well, he may be a good fighter, but he's not good with his quips. Pitt runs away into his first issue. The end! Actually, Youngblood and Pitt were kind of a match made in heaven. They both featured boring, badly drawn stories about over-muscled fighters. Oh, and neither one of them could keep to a monthly schedule. Hello and welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn. I think by now you people should know how I feel about Youngblood. In case you don't, it sucks! You can yell until you're blue in the face about how the concept of a proactive superhero team that has merchandising and appears on talk shows and are celebrities and crap is such a wonderful idea, and it's just the execution that fails, but in the end, it doesn't change that Youngblood sucks. You can tell me about the runs from Alan Moore, or the revived series from 2011, and that's great if they really are good, but honestly, it just keeps bringing me back to the question of why the hell anyone would want to do anything with this series when there is so much friggin' baggage with it! Look, my rant against the X-Men back in my Next 15 Screw-Ups was half joking. I don't hate the X-Men, and there are plenty of bad stories out there that have nothing to do with them, and there are great runs on the X-Men books. But Youngblood is a team that does not deserve all the hard work of creators. It's a bunch of unmemorable rip-off characters growling and gritting teeth and saying really stupid things and squinting and doing over-exaggerated poses and all that crap. Let Youngblood die already. Just let it Die! Rob Liefeld does not deserve the amount of loyalty that he somehow has engendered. What's that? Rob Liefeld is really enthusiastic about the industry and is really an awesome guy if you know him in person and loves comics and everything about the medium? Yeah, well, I'm really enthusiastic about the medium, but no one says that I should be drawing comic books. Rob Liefeld can't write. Rob Liefeld can't draw. Rob Liefeld can't create. And don't go telling me about how he created Deadpool and Cable. One, he didn't create Deadpool. He created some boring-ass mercenary who spoke in yellow-colored speech bubbles. Nobody would give a damn about him if not for the work of everybody else but him. And as for Cable, I admit most of my knowledge of the character comes from the animated series, but even if Cable really is all that awesome and iconic a character, well, congratulations! You have found all of one character that Rob Liefeld created that's actually good. Except a good creator is capable of making more than just one good character. Liefeld, on the other hand, settles on inventing 60,000 characters, and none of them are good. But to cite that Deadpool example again, is he really the one who created him if everything about the character that people like was done by others? You show me a Rob Liefeld character that people like, and I'll show you the other creators who are responsible for you liking them. The point is, companies, stop giving him work. Consumers, stop buying things with his name on it. And my fans, stop telling me about movies that are supposedly being made with his characters. Ooh, a Goddessy movie. I'm sure I'll see that. Never! Because not a single movie that Rob Liefeld's characters have been developed for has actually ever been made. And don't bring up not Deadpool in the Wolverine movie. I should not have to explain that again. Deadpool's not really his character, that wasn't really Deadpool, and he wasn't the main character of the damn movie! I'm sorry. I'm not angry at you all. I really am not, and I'm sorry if I yelled at you, but I'm kinda having a bad day, and it's not helping that today we're digging into Youngblood number 5. So you might recall that at the end of the last Youngblood, it solicited that the rest of the story would be featured in Brigade number 4. The letters column explained this in more detail, wherein I read the most confusing thing ever, that Youngblood number 1 to 4 was a mini-series, and that the conclusion to the story would be 10 pages long. A conclusion to a mini-series, which is supposed to be a self-contained story. Well, anyway, the 10 pages thing is actually a lie. It's 14 pages. However, this is hardly a mini-series. Look, the Marvel Transformers comic was originally slated to be just a 4-issue miniseries, but it was expanded to be an ongoing series because of popular demand. But it was still advertised on the top as a limited series. Nowhere on the Youngblood comics are they advertised as a miniseries. In addition, the story isn't concluded in those 4 issues, as I'll talk about in a second. The letters column also said that a Youngblood ongoing series was coming, but if it was always the plan for this to be a miniseries, why bother continue the numbering? It was already proven by this point that number 1 issues were selling better, so why not start fresh with a proper number 1? But anyway, yeah, Youngblood number 5 is actually the flip book of Brigade number 4. It's not the main feature because the letters column in the book is Brigades. Even in Rob Liefeld's other books, Youngblood is a second-rate feature and team. So what does the cover to issue 5 do to entice the readers? It has Badrock's face proclaiming, "Let's rock!" Charming. Hey, what if all my title cards just had my face shoved up against the camera? That would get people to watch my show, wouldn't it? We open where we left off last issue, with Badrock supposedly joining forces with the Darkseid ripoff Darkthorn. Although peeking ahead at the text boxes, apparently even Rob realized how idiotic his name was with the double N, so he reduced it to a single N. Well, isn't that cute? He's learning. Or perhaps the letterer did. Or perhaps it doesn't matter because this comic still blows.
Continued resistance is useless, mortals. I have claimed the mind of your comrade, and unless Prophet is surrendered to me, the rest of you shall share his fate.
If you have demonstrable mind control abilities, why are you even bothering with the ultimatum? Just use them!
Shaft, personal log entry.
A bunch of our ship fell off, and nobody likes me.
20 minutes ago, Die Hard and Bedrock disappeared through an alien teleportation device called the Crash Tunnel. Their mission? Stem the flow of disciples who had attacked Gate International in search of the man called Prophet. In retrospect, sending only 2 guys into an alien teleporter with absolutely no information on what was on the other side was kind of a stupid idea. Mere moments after they entered the tunnel, the disciples stopped coming. But now we're faced with a far greater threat. Clogged drain tunnels! We're gonna bring in some liquid plumber for this. Now we're faced with ourselves.
No, you're faced with a single team member under mind control. But why would I expect you to be able to count? After all, given the disparity between the solicited 10 pages and the actual 14, it seems to me your creator is incapable of counting.
Get ready, folks. As soon as I give the word, I want things to start happening in a hurry.
Oh, why start now? Shaft starts giving orders to individual members of that other team whose name escapes me and I can't be bothered to look them up. Look, I'll just say they're all Youngblood. Why not? They're all pretty interchangeable anyway.
Once Wildmane's on top of Bedrock, he does everything he can to stay there. Who knew that Bedrock was so ticklish?
But no, he's thrown off just in time for Brahma of the Youngblood away team and interchangeable big stony guy to punch Bedrock with their flexo arms that we see here. You gotta love 90s aesthetic with their costumes. What the hell do those rings on the gray guy do? Absolutely nothing. Couldn't he have just had a glove or a gauntlet or something if they were worried about color balance? Certainly, but then they wouldn't be rings! Or perhaps they're friendship bracelets and this guy just has a lot of BFFs. Oh, and by the way, this panel, the first of 3 splash pages in a row, all lacking proper backgrounds. In fact, looking ahead and glancing throughout the comic, I can see only like 1 or 2 spots that have any actual backgrounds. I feel sick saying this, but I missed the All-Star Batman and Robin comic. Say what you will about how insanely stupid it was, at least Jim Lee knows how to draw fricking walls!
It proves a hollow victory as we turn to witness Prophet's defeat at the hands of Darkthorn.
When the hell did that happen? Okay, assuming that this comic was actually supposed to be something other than what it is, Darkthorn is supposed to be the big bad and Prophet was a high-ranking supporting character, that this entire thing has been leading up to a slugfest between the two. It's why Prophet attacked Youngblood in the first place, and why the Disciple Borg things were attacking the previous few issues. And their fight happens off-panel? Oh, and by the way, I've complained a lot about Liefeld in this video, if only because all of Youngblood is inexorably tied to him. But today's issue actually only has him listed as the creator and plotter. No, the artist responsible for this mess is Chap Yape. Not that you'd actually be able to distinguish it, considering the two have almost identical art styles. The script for this was written by Eric Stevenson, who had been the editor on the book up until that point. Yes, Youngblood had an editor, believe it or not. The point is, though, this is one of the many reasons why I still am pissed about Liefeld after all these years. Chap was about 19 years old when he drew this stuff. Liefeld and his ilk ruined an entire generation of comic artists. Made more and more people draw like him when they could have been following people who didn't suck. Oh, and speaking of suck, time now to break another rule of storytelling. Show, don't tell. The third splash page occurs, and we have to be narrated what's going on.
With Prophet down, Darkthorn opens his crash tunnels once more.
Wait, what was Prophet doing that was preventing the crash tunnels from opening?
This time, however, it's not giant androids that spring forth, but a legion of winged demons! Parademons, lest ye forget that this whole thing is a ripoff of, homage to Jack Kirby's Fourth World mythos. It takes all our combined might to ward off their attack, and even then it seems like we're barely keeping our heads above water. Well, perhaps if you spread out, attacked Darkthorn, or if the artwork actually conveyed you guys having difficulty instead of just showing us 4 characters all smushed together and doing what all 90s characters did, shooting things. Even so, I'm helpless to do anything but watch as Darkthorn takes down Cougar, Brahma, and what remain of the Berserkers. Well, there's your problem right there. You all attacked him from the same angle. Spread out a bit, you won't be tripping all over yourselves. The Iron Man guy, Sentinel, decides to try his luck. Let's see what you've got! And Darkthorn just smacks him away. What he's got is a can of whoop-ass, apparently. The green energy guy, Photon, sees an opening and attacks, which Shaft narrates to us, but it's about as useful as anything else, so it's really just another waste of our time. So, remember that guy from the first issue who killed not Saddam Hussein? You don't? Well, I'm not surprised. Youngblood doesn't exactly have strong staying power. But anyway, that guy, Sci-Fire, apparently got himself a psychic dampening collar that's preventing him from using the full extent of his abilities to make people's heads blow up. After he sees the group getting their asses kicked, he suggests to Riptide and Vogue that he should be cut loose. I think I'd rather free a rabid dog, judging by the way things are going, though. Well, I'm judging more by your facial expression, which makes you look extremely constipated. Darkthorn is facing against Kirby and mildly choking him. You were a fool to defy me, Kirby. So much could have been yours had you not sided against me. But that is in the past. Your moment of retribution is at hand. Hey, you ever have dinner with 2 friends who knew each other before you, and they have their own stories that they're talking to each other about, and you're just left sitting there not knowing what to say because you don't know what they're talking about, and they never explain it? Yeah, this is nothing like that. I don't know anything about Kirby or Darkthorn, so it's more like being with 2 strangers. Old fool, there's no escaping destiny. It has been foretold in the prophecy that... You saying that you caused all this mess just to fulfill some kind of prophecy? I gotta tell you, buddy, that's pretty freaking lame. Well, if it's so lame, then why did you put it in the comic? Sci-Fire attacks Darkthorn and telekinetically sends him back. Darkthorn threatens Sci-Fire. Sci-Fire uses pink energy back at him and tells him to just try to kick his ass. And then Darkthorn decides to leave. Seriously! Defeating you now would be too simple a triumph. Defeating you now would totally be easy, and it has nothing to do with me wetting my pants. When compared to the satisfaction I might one day take in bending your already blackened soul to my will, it would be a hollow victory indeed. Until such time, beware!
Wimps!
The members of the Berserkers decide to chase after the retreating Darkthorn, but Kirby stays behind to go help out Prophet, probably in his spin-off book. Youngblood's disease has hit the Berserkers hard. I mean, Kirby's eyes are fine, but this guy has completely whited eyes. Remember to give generously to the Youngblood's Disease Foundation. Only with your help can we stop Youngblood's disease from taking more characters' eyes. And with that, the Berserkers disappear without a trace. The mark of truly great characters. They come into the plot without any explanation, and then subsequently leave without any explanation, having affected nothing in the story. Before the crash tunnel closes all the way, Die Hard comes falling out of it. It's me, all right, Shaft. A little worse for the wear, but at least I made it back in one piece. One Piece is right. Check out Die Hard's arms there. The dude looks like an action figure with absolutely zero articulation for his arms. Just him posing in a way that makes it look like he's getting ready to toss a football to the quarterback. Dude! If he didn't pose like that, how would we know if he was strong or not?
You get back up to the ship! Dude! We'll be right back after these messages! What you see is what you get. And what you see is more of the show because we are back! Also, I think the yellow bits on his arms and legs are supposed to signify that his costume or skin or whatever is ripping. He's an android, isn't he? But it took me a while to realize that because, frankly, if you removed all of that white area, how would you be able to tell the difference of it being a robot versus just armor that any other member of the team would wear? And as near as I can tell, we've prevented Darkthorn from achieving his aims here on Earth. Yep, and you did that by getting your asses kicked by him. Go Team Youngblood! Think about it, he only left because he chickened out against Sci-Fire, whose only incredible feat so far is making one guy's head explode. I would hope some interdimensional dictator, or whatever Darkthorn is, would be a little less susceptible to that. Yeah, whatever they actually were, I'm still not too clear on exactly what happened. Neither am I, and I've read all 5 issues! Bedrock is feeling less mind-controlled as well. I've got a headache that won't quit, and I can't remember anything past running into that crazy tunnel. Wait, why are my pants on backwards? Hey, as far as I'm concerned, the important thing is that this whole debacle is over. You wish. There's like 4 or 5 volumes of Youngblood comics that I still need to go through. Kirby and Prophet decide to head out, though they hitch a ride with Youngblood since they have no transportation of their own. You know, wasn't Prophet in suspended animation since World War II? Don't they want to acclimate him to this new century? And hey, wait, if he's been in suspended animation all this time, why the hell does Darkthorn know about him and want to get his hands on him? Is this like a different dimension timescale thing? Why did it take so long for Darkthorn and the Disciples to track him down?
It just raises too many questions.
And so our comic ends as it began, a close-up shot of Bedrock's face. Who's gonna clean up all this mess? Apparently, every writer after this one. This comic sucks! Look, let me put away my general hate for 90s style artwork and writing trends involving guns and violence for a second. If we were to ignore that, this comic is still absolutely awful from a narrative standpoint. Even if the other 4 issues had been well put together, as a conclusion to this storyline, it's just a mess. A lot of the pages, if they're not splash pages, only have 2 or 3 panels on them, usually with a central panel taking up most of the space. There's not much of a fight, and even if it had been properly set up, there's no real final confrontation with the villain of the piece. Hell, Sci-Fire hasn't been seen since the first issue. I was starting to think he had just been forgotten about by the creative team altogether. If we look at Youngblood again next year, at least it'll be off to a fresh start with a new storyline, because honestly, I can't understand how anyone liked this back in the day. Hello and welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn. It's time to celebrate the anniversary of the first text review I ever made! You know, the things that I did before the videos that none of you ever read from back in 2007. But hey, in honor of that, let's take a look at another issue of Youngblood. And whew, at least that opening storyline is over with. It introduced us to the characters and world of Youngblood. And what a memorable world it is, with characters like... Shaft, and, what was this comic about again? Oh yeah, about 5 issues too long. Yeah, as if you didn't know already, Youngblood sucks. A lot. How bad do you have to be that not even your book's own creator can be bothered to finish off the opening storyline? Youngblood bad. It really blows my mind. Image was started because several artists and creators felt like Marvel didn't respect their work nor gave them proper compensation for their work, especially since they often claimed they were doing more writing on the books than the actual writers. So what does Rob Liefeld do with Youngblood? Half the time, he doesn't actually script the things, and the other half, he doesn't draw them. The big conclusion to his arc was drawn by Chap Yape, and it was a confusing mess on top of an already confused mess. If you include the issue 0 as the actual start of the series, the book had 6 issues spread out over 20 months! Almost 2 years to release 6 comics! It's even more horrifyingly ironic that the storyline was also supposed to be paying tribute to Jack Kirby, a man who was legendary for his ability to finish multiple quality comic books on time when no one believed he could. Oh, but most certainly things are only gonna get better for the scheduling delays now, right? I mean, how much worse could they get? Issue 6 came out a year later. Now, to be fair, I'm basing this off the cover months, which is more a sign of when they should be taken off the newsstand, but that's usually pretty consistent across the board. In addition, the remaining 4 issues of Youngblood, this volume of it anyway, counting spin-off books like Team Youngblood, there have apparently been about 165 different Youngblood comics, all came out in 1994, so they at least were improving the schedule a little bit. But still, was there anybody who cared at this point? I know nothing about Youngblood's characters. Last year I talked about the difficulty of Devin Grayson's Titans team trying to balance a book with 10 team members. Now imagine trying to balance a book with 12 team members who all have the same sneering expression on their faces all the time, and whose opening arc in their book is not even about them, but a completely different character and associated team. How much character development did they get, you ask?
Nothing! Absolutely nothing!
But hey, maybe in this issue they finally turn it all around and make me give a crap. And maybe the comic book I'm about to lift into frame will suddenly become a ham sandwich. So let's dig into Youngblood number I still don't think it's going to be any good. The cover, of course, is garbage. It's a wraparound featuring 5 members of the team, one of whom I do not recognize, but because of the crappy perspective, I can't tell if he's supposed to be short or just at a really odd angle. There's Shaft and his stupid stringless bow. I think it's supposed to work with magnets or something, which just raises the question of why you would design your weapon like that. If it's supposed to be propelled faster thanks to said magnets, wouldn't it be shaped more like a gun to get maximum range? Or at least have projectiles that are more easily reloadable? Don't get me wrong, I'm not questioning the awesomeness of archery or archery-based superheroes. I'm just saying Shaft's attempt to make his archery all super-teched just makes it ridiculous that he's not just using a friggin' gun. Also, Vogue on the cover is now wearing battle armor. I'm guessing Rob got bored of her old character design and instead put her in the armor that has boob socks. Because that's so conducive to protecting the chest. And to really screw with the perspective, for some reason, Die Hard is looking to the side, despite all the other members looking up. Well, I presume Shaft is looking up. Youngblood's disease has, of course, completely eradicated his eyes and left only a black void. We open with Cable, Cable, engaged in a motorcycle chase somewhere near Honduras.
Around 2 a.m. this morning, I left Honduras, loaded up on enough supplies to last me, hopped on my bike, and left. Woo! Road trip!
Just look at this guy. The capsule belt wrapped around his arm, the silly laser gun that doesn't even look like he's holding it properly, the weapons strapped to his back, what I'm guessing are supposed to be grenades on his shoulder, but just end up looking like he's got pop cans attached to it instead. If you ever wanted to cosplay an early 90s Image character, just buy a muscle shirt, sneer a whole lot, and strap painted Coke cans to your body in random places. And if anybody asks who you are, you can just give them any name and it'll fit.
Course, these nits were on my tail by 201, but what the hey?
Nits? What, like nitwits or something? Did we need slang for a word that was probably already conceived as slang?
Yep, old soldiers don't die. They just get reassigned to desk jobs. Not this one. Anyone expecting Lieutenant Colonel Bravo to while away his days pushing pencils and pulling papers is out of it.
Oh yeah, because we could totally see this dude sitting in an office and complaining to his coworkers around the coffee maker about having a meeting with the Bobs later and how he needs to do better with his TPS reports.
Probably explains the royal treatment these yobs are giving me.
Yobs? Okay, now you're just making up random words to insult people. Is that a thing now? Can I just make up nonsense words and use them as insults? Because in that case, Lieutenant, you're a flibbity-flu.
If I'd gone along with the rules, played dumb like everyone else here, I wouldn't be in this fix.
When it comes to Youngblood, I doubt anyone has to play dumb. Speaking of dumb, on the first page, this dude had a silly, stupid-looking half-helmet thing glued to the side of his face. On the next page, the thing apparently decided it didn't look ridiculous enough on its own and grew a copy of itself out of nowhere, and that went to the other side of his face. This is another one of those things that just appears sometimes in the 90s. What the hell is this thing supposed to be?
Dude! Those are just his cyborg earmuffs!
Cybernetic earmuffs?
Yeah, dude, when you're that big, you use a body heat a lot faster, especially around the ears. As such, the cyborg earmuffs automatically expand to cover them when they get cold. Unfortunately, I've always had a little problem with rules. Always held firmly that they only existed to be broken. Just like people who get in your way.
So you're a murderous asshole. That clears things up. Ah, beautiful Liefeldian anatomy. Gotta love how the attempt to make him look muscular just makes him look like his stomach and back are about 2 to 3 feet thick. Also, his gun is a different shape from what it was before.
Rules, people, governments, they're all obstacles where I'm concerned.
You must be fun at parties. While he boasts to himself about how awesome he is, he lands his bike on a boat and I guess that's enough to get him away from his pursuer. I mean, sure, he's probably too far away to ramp over to the boat too, but he could fire a gun or something. So Lieutenant Colonel Not Cable thinks to himself that he just hopes he can get to who I presume to be his son thanks to this huge picture he's carrying around with him. The sad thing is that I'm not sure if the picture is supposed to be recent or if it's a picture of an adult or of a kid, because it's drawn exactly like how an adult will be drawn, and yet it looks like a really bad school picture and the neck is too thin. I think it's supposed to be Shaft, but again, these characters all have the exact same cheekbones and hairstyles, so it's difficult to tell them apart. And speaking of telling people apart, we cut to the Youngblood team, and narration by A Good Day to Die Hard's crotch. Specifically, he's talking about ground activity at the AEC nuclear testing site on Nellis Air Force Range. Said ground activity may be perpetrated by a cyborg terrorist organization known as Cybernet. You think terrorism is scary today? It could be worse. They could be cyborgs. And here's where we get the kicker for this crap. It seems I spoke too soon about how Youngblood wasn't published for a year. That's technically true for this book, but apparently in between issues 5 and 6, there were 9 issues of a book called Team Youngblood. Well, it was really important for them to distinguish between the two books. It's not like the regular Youngblood book had a team in it, just like those two. Why the hell would you start a second Youngblood book like this? It's not even like Prophet, where you could theoretically say that people wanted to see ongoing adventures of him or Kirby's team. Again, theoretically speaking here. But Team Youngblood has the exact same people as regular Youngblood. Oh, but a few additions to the team, because Lord knows we didn't have enough characters in Youngblood. Now, some might recall that in a previous episode, I was confused about the letters page for Youngblood number 4 that referred to the first 5 issues as a mini-series. So apparently that was supposed to be a mini-series. Except then, why the hell did they bother continuing on with the numbering a year later after they had already worked on another Youngblood book? Just make that the ongoing. This is not like Transformers or any other book that starts out as a miniseries but then becomes an ongoing due to popularity. They didn't wait a year and release a whole other book before they continued on with it. And hell, the speculator boom wasn't quite over yet. Just start over with a new #1. It wouldn't have sold as well as the first one you did, but at least you might capture some new readers instead of losing the interest of everyone who only followed Youngblood itself. But back to our story already in progress. Die Hard says that a task force has been put together to take on Cybernet, which includes him, Combat, Vogue, and some guy wearing the same stupid cybernetic earmuffs as Not Cable. His name? Dutch.
You son of a bitch.
No, not that Dutch. That Dutch is from something good. Not exactly a powerhouse force, considering the scope of the threat we're being sent to investigate. Every member of your team looks like they've been inflated with a bicycle pump, and you all carry a gun more than half your size. What exactly is a powerhouse by your definition? Regardless of any arguments to the contrary, the true nature of this mission is clear. Our demise would seem imminent. Why? If you think it's because your team isn't strong enough, you guys are government agents as far as I can tell. How often do you hear about the government making good decisions? Ugh, this waiting is killing me. Am I the only one here who's frightened? Oh yeah, you really look scared, what with you gritting your teeth. Well, maybe she is frightened. After all, she's bringing her hands down to her crotch as if she really needs to pee.
Frightened? A Catalan warrior knows no fear.
Oh yeah, that reminds me. Whatever happened to all those other warriors in your stupid-looking warrior culture who were hovering over the earth in an earlier issue? Or was that just done in Team Youngblood because why would we want consistency in a single book? Or did Rob just get bored and forgot about that subplot? Dutch, who we can now see thanks to a close-up, has silly green horizontal lines over the eyes of his mask. Some superheroes are designed with form-following function, others going for symbolism or a certain color scheme. These superheroes are designed with the philosophy of, just put some random clown makeup on someplace. There, we have a whole new character. The brass back home don't give a rat's at $$ about your fear. You have your own comic company. You don't have the stamp of the Comics Code Authority on this, so I presume you don't try to answer to them. And your heroes routinely solve their problems by shooting them. I don't think you have to worry about censoring the word ass. As far as they're concerned, we've got a job to do. If we don't do it, if we get nixed out here today, c'est la vie. And you don't have a problem with that?
What troubles me, Vogue, is that you do. If the warrior spirit is not within you, why are you here? Being a warrior means I don't care if my life is thrown away stupidly by jackasses.
Listen, can it with the warrior shtick, Combat. Vogue has every right to be worried. We all know what Cybernet is capable of. And yet earlier you said you didn't care about people's fear, Dutch. Consistency! It'd be nice to have at some point. Also, is Vogue's armor supposed to be shiny? She's got a little light twinkle on her breast, same as one on Combat and Die Hard. We gotta say, they're not really selling the metallic look when it's dull brown and clearly not metal! Die Hard suggests that they're not going in to end the threat of Cybernet, but to test them and see how powerful they are.
Look at us, an alien criminal, a beautiful Russian gymnast, a former member of the very organization we're being sent to confront, and the bipedal equivalent of a rechargeable battery.
You sell yourself too short, Die Hard. My rechargeable batteries can't attack things with their crotches. We cut to New York City, where Badrock is being interviewed on a talk show. It's a parody of David Letterman, instead named David Kellerman, and of course he looks absolutely nothing like David Letterman, so whatever. And I should know, I own a comic where the Avengers meet David Letterman.
And yes, I'm going to review that someday. Still, I'll give this comic credit. It's the first time in the entire damn series where they actually do the superheroes are celebrities thing that they kept saying was so innovative about this book, even though it's not innovative and it's been done a hell of a lot better elsewhere. Anyway, Dave mentions that Bad Rock has been busy. He's got a hot new music video out, a popular chain of restaurants, toys, and a clothing line. Oh yeah, I've seen those clothes. Men's Huge and Huger. Also, music video. Dear Lord, would I love to see how the hell they do that with Bad Rock, especially because he's supposed to be a little kid just in a giant body. Still more likable than Justin Bieber. Dave asked him if he feels like he's running a bit thin with all of that happening.
Nah, as a matter of fact, I was sort of thinking of starting up my own late-night talk show.
Late night? I saw the establishing shot. It's the middle of the friggin' afternoon. Just as they're about to go to commercial, a woman stands up in the audience and aims a gun at Dave. And naturally, it's an absolutely silly-looking ray gun, even though on the previous page it looked like a normal gun. Speaking of changing in between panels, Dave apparently felt like taking off his jacket after the woman aimed a gun at him. Anyway, the woman is pissed because Dave won't return her calls, because that's a legitimate reason for trying to murder him with a super advanced laser gun. Fortunately, Bad Rock can take a hit from it and easily disarms her and knocks her out.
You know something, Dave? She's kinda cute now that I look at her. Maybe you should have picked the phone up one of those times.
She tried to kill people. After the show, Bad Rock's agent or manager or whatever, I thought Youngblood's manager or whatever was some doofy-looking guy named Timer, tells him that this will push his Q rating through the roof and up his popularity. Bad Rock is uncertain, but the dude can't just keep overhyping how big he's gonna be from this. As if he wasn't already big, since I don't think they'd be inviting him onto the show if he wasn't popular already. We then cut to the White House, where we have more examples of hideous artwork. Also, Shaft. The overly tall Shaft is meeting with his liaison to the government named Graves. And believe it or not, Graves is actually taller than Shaft and has wider shoulders, and Shaft is already like a gajillion heads tall. All he's telling Shaft is that the president wants changes to the Youngblood program. This is a weird remake of the West Wing. What changes does the president want? Well, they're not being overly specific, but naturally this has Shaft all pissy. People looking pissed off in a Rob Liefeld comic? What a startling new development. They're under contract with the government until 1998, so he has to abide by the changes. First up on the changes list?
I would like to introduce you to the Youngblood of Tomorrow!
The tagline of the first issue was The Next Generation of Heroes. So they finally admitted that that generation of heroes sucked and are calling a do-over. Not that this latest batch looks any better. First is an Australian named Nightsaber, who wears a stupid bandana on his head that defies gravity, unless somebody just has a really powerful fan on. And then there's... Troll. Do you remember Troll? Because I remember Troll. Troll was the star of the Extreme Super Christmas special that I reviewed years and years ago. And I'm just so happy to see him. I feel so much better now that he's in the story, because I was just so interested in seeing his first appearance. And finally, there's, Die Hard.
And our trio of newcomers is rounded out by the latest creation from our Die Hard program.
Man, this Die Hard better be better than the last one. I hear people are really starting to get sick of them. Also, I hope this robot is cool. Shaft questions why they need a second Die Hard, which I could make another movie joke about, but I think I've used up all the humor of his stupid name. And Grave responds with an evil grin.
This new unit is much more versatile than the current model. The current model is a human being, Graves. This
thing is nothing more than an unfeeling machine with the real diehard's memories and experiences downloaded in his intelligence circuitry. How the hell do you know that? You didn't even seem to be aware of this dude's existence. For all you know, he's another person too, asshole! Troll endears himself to us by saying that just makes him a great straight man to his jokes, and Shaft goes off on him. I'm the leader of this team, and as such, I expect to be addressed with at least some degree of respect. I expect to be treated with the utmost respect when I wear this head condom, mister. And as for jokes, this is a government fighting force, Troll, not a comedy troupe. Don't speak too soon, Shaft. I do end up laughing at you idiots a lot. Before Shaft can complain about this whole thing to Graves, he receives a phone call about protesters out at the front gate of the White House. Some undesirables are attempting to stage a protest of some sort. 1. Undesirables? Really? 2. I sincerely doubt one can just start a protest in front of the friggin' White House. I would imagine you would need to file permits, especially in the place that's supposed to have the highest security of the entire nation. 3. When aren't there protesters in front of the White House? Do they really need you for this? And immediately after Shaft says to let him know if they'll need Youngblood, the glass window near them explodes. Die Hard number 2 says there are over half a dozen armed and dangerous hostiles outside. What do they hope to gain by attacking us? Probably your deaths, I would imagine, since you're all standing in front of the exploded window without taking any cover or protection whatsoever. Dumbass.
Beats me. Maybe they just want to see your costume designer. They could sure use it.
And we see the terrorists are wearing body armor, carrying guns, and have face masks with a red circle on them. You all wear the same outfits already, Troll, and they all suck!
Hear me, leaders of America!
Dude, you're standing at the main gate. You may want to get in a bit closer if you want them to hear you.
No longer will the citizenry of this country stand idly by while our society is eroded by the presence of the blasphemous new gene. No more shall we blindly accept the will of an uncaring government protected and run by beings who can only loosely be described as human.
Not really seeing any difference here from normal American political discourse. They declare themselves to be a group called the Brotherhood of Man, and Shaft thinks he recognizes the name. If I'm not mistaken, these are the same fanatics Sentinel's team ran afoul of a while back. An editorial box informs us that it was in the recently concluded Extreme Prejudice crossover. Oh, goody! More stuff that Youngblood was involved in that was not the actual main book. Why even have a main book if you're not gonna do anything in it? Also, Extreme! Troll puts on a helmet, the most sensible thing he's ever done, and the team charges out to fight. And any tension for this fight scene is completely eliminated as we see Graves thinking to himself, excellent. Everything is progressing as I had hoped. Meaning he clearly set this whole thing up to showcase the new Youngblood members both to Shaft and the public at large. It's not that I mind that he did that, but rather that we're getting this revelation now instead of after the fight. This fight is not gonna go badly. It's choreographed to go like this. And the worst part is that this is, in fact, a ripoff of something that happened at DC. Maxwell Lord hired the Royal Flush Gang to attack the newly formed Justice League International so he could show off Booster Gold's skills. Only difference being that that didn't suck! Troll knocks out a terrorist, showing his horribly stumpy arms. Looking good, Troll. No, he really isn't. Nobody is looking good in this comic. You're not half bad for a little guy. Meaning what exactly, Shaft? Are you prejudiced against them or something? Also, Shaft, great belly flop there out of a second-story window. Let me know how that goes for you when you smack face first into the ground. Don't you think it's about time you crawled on out of the Middle Ages? This isn't Camelot, and you're not storming this castle, says the man wielding a bow and arrow. This is the White House, and your presence here is a federal offense. That raises a good question. Where the hell are the actual Secret Service agents? Maybe they were just blindsided by Night Saber's completely vertical kick there. It's not even that his leg is up like that. It's that his body is twisting in the complete opposite direction and his thigh looks like it's just attached to the hip on a ball joint like a toy. We then have a splash page with narration talking about Night Saber's backstory and powers. How, of course, he was a troubled youth or something, but what really gets me is his superpower.
He could absorb aggression, and not only could he absorb it, he could release it as well, in the form of concentrated bursts of energy.
You know, it's not a bad idea for a superpower. But just like everything else in Youngblood, it's poorly executed. And Die Hard Mark II takes out the remaining terrorists who attempt to flee in a van. He picks it up and brings it back, leading Troll and him to attempt humor.
"You've been taking your vitamins, ain't ya?"
Vitamins have little to do with my design or functions, Bartholomew Troll. My physical strength is derived from a complex system of cyber hydraulics.
The joke is that Die Hard doesn't understand jokes because he is a robot, and oh dear lord, this is asinine, and thankfully we're almost done here. And yep, Graves thinks to himself that everything went to plan and the media has arrived to report on the situation. All of 3 people. And again, the lack of security at the friggin' White House, because apparently these 3 jumped the fence given what direction they came from. Hell, where is everything in DC? Liefeld apparently was too busy drawing clouds to remember that there are other buildings in the area. And so our comic ends with Badrock and the manager guy at an airport, presumably during the next morning, and he's lamenting that he isn't seeing any reports on what happened at the talk show. However, he does find something of interest in an issue of a magazine. And what's the title of the magazine?
Extreme Close-Up!
Move over, Badrock. Youngblood's most popular new member is 3 foot 4 inches of dynamite and goes by the name of Troll. I think I'm gonna puke.
Me too. What the hell made Troll popular in any definition of the term? This comic sucks! Not content with the cast of hundreds the book already had, the creative team apparently decided to add several new members who probably won't get expanded upon or made interesting in any regard. The artwork continues to be atrocious, either just in its over-muscled, unimaginative designs or in the laziness of not adding backgrounds or details where there should be. The fights, as a result, are laughable in the needed contortions to accomplish some moves, the dialogue is insipid and annoying, and there's not even a point to a lot of the pages. Yeah, it says that Die Hard's team against Cybernet is gonna happen in Team Youngblood number 10, so all of his pages were just there to set up stuff happening in another book! On top of that, this thing is longer than a normal issue at 36 pages. Remember how issue 5 was just shoved into the back of an issue of Brigade and only half length? It's like they just took the missing pages from that and put them in this pile of crap. Why did people ever want to work on this book? I will never understand what they saw in it. Gah! Hello and welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn. Youngblood number 7. 7! I've looked at 6 issues of this series beforehand, and I technically did the first one twice, and yet I am still no closer to finishing it than when I did that first text review in 2007. I don't know what's weirder, that I still care enough to look at this piece of crap every year, or that you people haven't abandoned me or rioted in the comments section over how I'm still reviewing it. In either case, previously on Youngblood. Backgrounds and feet take far too much time to draw when you're trying to invent 60 new characters at once, all of whom look alike in some capacity. As such, Rob Liefeld decided to do both by inventing new members of Youngblood, even though we still don't know anything about the old members. What's that? There was a Team Youngblood book and a crossover called Extreme Prejudice that might have expanded upon the characters? 1. They had the same creative team as Youngblood. Do you really think they did that? 2. If you can't be bothered to actually put character development in your main book, why should I bother with the other books? We'll probably get to Team Youngblood eventually, outside of my annual look at this book. Oh, and Badrock was on David Letterman in a recreation of a real-life stalker of his, so you know Youngblood is all class. And the worst part is that issue 6 is probably the best issue of Youngblood so far. Seriously, it actually felt like, well, those first 6 issues were garbage, let's try a do-over, where one of the heroes is actually doing the superhero as celebrity shtick, while there's an exciting, well, exciting in quotation marks anyway, fight at the White House. And it was still utter garbage! Now, I lay most of the blame on Liefeld's feet, both for the artwork and for the overall story, again, quotation marks, but the scriptwriter and editor was Eric Stevenson, so maybe he actually has some inkling of talent on display. So let's dig into Youngblood number 7, it hasn't arrived in the mail yet, and see if maybe, just maybe, some tiny bits of quality will elevate this series. I mean, we can look past bad art if the story is good, right? Right? Look at this cover. Is this not a perfect representation of Youngblood right there? Badrock winding up to punch the reader in the face. That is what this book is. The comic trying to hit us over and over. Also, great cover design. Really illustrates what to expect when it's just a dude's face and fist. We open with Shaft standing in front of a giant refrigerator. I mean, massive. Look how far back that thing must go given this perspective and relative body sizes. I guess it makes sense given how huge some of the Youngblood members are that they would need a fridge that size. This is a horror movie fridge right there. Didn't the Cinema Snob review a movie with a killer fridge? I don't even know where to start. I'd start by putting on some pants or a shirt or something. You have both the fridge and freezer door open. Your nipples must be hard enough to cut glass at this point. Let's look at the contents of this fridge. Let's see, OJ, soda, purple stuff, ooh, Sunny D. Also, we see why this fridge is so huge. Someone just made a gigantic sandwich and left it in the fridge. If they were in such a rush that they didn't actually eat that sandwich, how did they have enough time to put it back in the fridge? Jeez, look at this. Nobody wrapped up anything in tin foil or put anything in Tupperware. They just left food with maybe a single bite taken out of it right on the shelves. Who does that? I might as well start strapping slabs of meat onto my body if I'm gonna eat any of this stuff. So you'll look like every other member of your team. Maybe just some ice cream and some cake. Yeah, a hot dog or 2, or 3. Shaft, are you pregnant? What the hell? No, what am I thinking? I can't do this. I need to stay healthy, need to look healthy. The public, they're always watching me. People look up to me. I'm a role model. Mommy, when I grow up, I want to kill people with a bow that doesn't have a string. But Shaft decides, screw that, he's hungry, and thus begins eating every single thing in the refrigerator, Homer Simpson style. And enjoy this lovely image of Shaft the Hutt as he licks his rather disgusting mouth, all the while ballooning up more and more. Oh my god, I'm a blimp! I wish you were a blimp, then you wouldn't be talking. Even though in this panel he's not holding anything, the next panel features him now holding an ice cream bar. I'd criticize the continuity, but this is pretty evidently a dream, so continuity issues like that get a pass. Instead, I'll simply enjoy the mocking laughter of everyone around him. Not because he's fat, but because at one point this book sported the tagline, "The Next Generation of Heroes." Shaft wakes up having dozed off on his couch next to his girlfriend, who in this panel looks absolutely tiny next to him. Also, sphere boobs in boob socks. Shelly! Oh my gosh, I just had the worst dream!
Was it a dream where you see yourself standing in sort of sun god robes on a pyramid with 1,000 naked women screaming and throwing little pickles at you?
A dream? Then it must have been a doozy, Jeff. You were screaming like a crazy person! The worst! I dreamt that Youngblood actually did become that Teen Titans book it was initially supposed to be! You sure everything's alright? Yeah, everything's fine. Nothing a good 40 minutes on the treadmill won't fix. Yeah, he needs to go and sharpen his face some more. Look at that thing. Yeesh. We cut to Vail, Colorado, an actual place. It's a famous ski resort town, the third largest in North America. Though slightly less famous than Aspen, Vail remains a virtual paradise for skiers, shoppers, and anyone eager to get away from the hustle and bustle of city life. It's also famous for abominable snowmen emerging from nowhere and eating people. And like Aspen, Vail is always a popular spot for vacationing celebrities. Movie stars, media moguls, pop singers, presidents, all come from far and wide to hear their legendary timeshare presentation. And of course, superheroes too, as we see this 2-page spread on its side of Bad Rock skiing, with the composition designed to attract your eye towards his crotch. Or maybe the page separation was supposed to hide that, but obviously Rob had to draw it like this to begin with before it got put to paper. Thanks, Rob. I'm sure Die Hard appreciates how you're taking attention away from his crotch. Unknown to the world at large, Bad Rock is, in actuality, a mere 17 years old. Oh, underage crotch too. That's just frickin' brilliant. And though his life is filled with all the trappings and concerns that come with being the most popular member of the world's greatest super team...
Oh, wait, you serious? Let me laugh even harder.
There are still times when he enjoys doing the one thing that comes more naturally to him than anything else. Scarf knitting. Being a big kid. He can use his pull-ups and everything. At the base of the hill, Bad Rock meets up with some teenage fans of his, who of course want an autograph.
Sure thing, but one at a time, okay? And after this, I've got a jet. My buddy Robert Steiner's stomach is growling so loud, I thought he was gonna cause an avalanche out there.
I wouldn't worry too much about his stomach, Bad Rock, but I would worry about his eyes, which have shrunken to tiny, beady little things. The good Mr. Steiner is more than happy to let him, since according to his thought balloons, he's worried about the newfound popularity of Troll and the other new members. We cut to Youngblood headquarters and its raspberry orange sky, where... Oh God, now I'm blind!
Come on now, let's get together and burn.
It's not even in my hands, but I can still see it! Mommy, I don't want to use comic anymore. Tell me your secret. Boyle, we have to get out of here. We have to. Boyle! You did this! Oh. Why, Liefeld? Why? Why do you do this to me? Is it because you're insulted in the theme song? Not even Gary Brodsky pulls this kind of crap. If you wanted to get to me, you didn't have to hurt so many other people. A little known piece of superhero trivia. They can't sing. Oh yeah? Well, what about Nightcat? Okay, fair enough. Unless, of course, the hero in question happens to be a 3,000-year-old troll. Funny, I always imagined most trolls to be 12-year-olds. Dear Lord, thank you for obscuring shower doors. What do you think is worse, this or Tommy Wiseau's ass? Ugh. Troll gets out of the shower, but is confronted by that government agent who acts as a liaison for Youngblood, Graves. Some words of wisdom, Bartholomew. Never start a land war in Asia. Fame can be equally as dangerous as it is fleeting should one become too absorbed in it. Have fair warning. I am watching you. Although I admit I really wish I hadn't been watching you a minute ago.
Yeah? What are you, some kind of pervert?
And I will continue to watch you. In fact, I'm watching you right now. Wait, where are you going? I can't watch you if you leave the room! Why does Troll wear his goggles in the shower? Ugh, whatever. Now over to Night Saber, who I should probably just call Australian and competent, given that's his characterization.
Now this is certainly something we never had back in Melbourne.
Guess what Damon always said was true. Real life ain't good enough for the Americans. They gotta go and create more stuff from scratch. Have I mentioned I'm from Australia yet? Kangaroo, dingo, shrimp on the barbie. Nightsaber is doing some training on some robots because we needed an action scene. Before I hooked up with Youngblood, hell, before I took on a name Nightsaber, all me training was done on the streets. You'd be surprised how many robots you find on the mean streets of Brisbane. Back then, fighting was part and parcel of surviving. I could absorb the anger and aggression of those around me and harness it into concentrated energy blasts. Lucky for me though, I had an advantage over the other wankers trying to make it. Yeah, you had massively flared boots. No one messes with someone when they have boots like that. Sorry about that, mate. Crikey, koala bear, Fosters! Bloody amazing all the money the US government throws round. Yeah, pretty much. Shaft, up in the control booth for the, why don't we call it, unsafe room, tells him that they're heading to Nevada. It seems Die Hard's team is down there from Team Youngblood number 10, and they're going in to get the ones responsible. Right on, mate! I've been itching for some real action! I bet, given how a few panels ago your eyes seem to be trying to migrate off your face in order to escape for this proverbial action. I have to admit, I had reservations about this one at first, but it looks like he's shaping into a fine addition to the team. Yeah, I mean, his legs look to be just as ridiculously long as yours, Shaft. Back over to Badrock in Vale, who's continuing to act as if he's in the middle of an old Mountain Dew commercial. However, his extreme skiing gets interrupted by an energy blast that knocks him into a snowbank. And the blast comes from this guy. His name, according to the comic, is Overtkill. I don't know if that's clever or stupid, so I'm just gonna groan. Ugh. And naturally, this character has his backstory in an issue of Spawn, and he is rambling about killing Badrock. Because why would we want to establish a rivalry or mortal enemy or anything like that in the pages of the book Badrock actually is in? And he's got the headphone tube things that Liefeld puts on his characters, whose function still completely eludes me. Steiner spots Badrock in trouble and calls out to him, causing enough of a distraction to allow Badrock to punch Overtkill in yet another 2-page spread turned on its side. I'll give it credit, at least this one tries to create motion and Badrock sending Overtkill flying. It's just it is, like all of the comic, badly drawn, and it honestly could have been done with just a splash page. And in fact, the next 2 pages are also turned on their side, but not for a spread, but 4 random panels of Badrock punching the crap out of Overtkill. You know what I just realized? In any other story, all the noise they're generating would have caused an avalanche by now, but nope! Need to have these super sweet punches that look more like Badrock is just kind of swinging his arms up and down. See? Even I could be a member of Youngblood! Overtkill shoots an energy beam again, this one much more powerful. This causes Badrock to Hulk out. I'm not even kidding. Okay, buddy, now you've made me mad! And so our comic ends on a final 2-page spread unnecessarily turned on its side, while Badrock is now even more huge and muscly than before, which I didn't even think was possible. Let's rock, dirtbag!
How is Hulk one with more realistic physique?
Oh, and naturally, this fight ends in Team Youngblood number 11. Were they just competing with the Spider-Man books at the time and how many different series you need to pick up in order to get a complete story? Speaking of, there's also an epilogue where Chapel, haven't seen him in a while, is running through Washington, D.C., where he references events in Bloodstrike, puts on his own stupid headphone chin brace thing, grabs some ridiculous sci-fi guns, and we learn he's on his way over to the pages of Spawn. Oh man, I'm really excited to see that long-standing rivalry between Chapel and Spawn come to fruition. Remember how that was established before this? Yeah, unsurprisingly, this comic sucks. And yet, once again, I have to give it at least a tiny bit of praise. Why? Well, we don't get much, but Do-Over Youngblood here actually bothers to try to give character development and explore the idea of them being celebrity superheroes. Sure, nothing about what we learn of these characters is all that interesting, but I give Eric Stevenson credit for at least trying to turn this thing around into something presentable. It's not working, mostly because of the Liefeld touch, but hey, it's still better than the first few issues, so kudos. And after something that bad, we need an example of something really awesome. Come back next week and the week after for The Romtrospective, a look at Rom Space Knight. And those comics have actually arrived already. Hello and welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn. For any newcomers around here, today is the day we celebrate the first time I wrote a review of a terrible comic book way back in 2007. 9 years later, I am 9 years older. Previously on Youngblood. In a world of people who all uncannily look like one another, and some look like Wolverine, we have Youngblood, a government-sponsored superhero team that is super realistic because, like, they go on talk shows and ski trips, like all Black Ops teams.
Because nothing says covert like bright red, yellow, and blue spandex.
Last time in particular, Shaft had a nightmare that seemed to indicate he had an eating disorder. Hey, guess how much impact that has on this issue? Here's a hint. It doesn't. What else happened? Shaft was bringing more Youngblood members to go help Team Youngblood. Oh, by the way, apparently we needed to read Team Youngblood to understand what was going on, because it makes so much sense for the spin-off to come out more frequently than the main title. Badrock got into a fight with somebody he apparently had a rivalry with while going skiing, and Chapel was going off to fight Spawn, because why not add another crossover into this Gordian knot of storytelling? Also, Troll got naked and showered, but I've repressed the memory of that panel so I don't gouge my eyes out. So let's dig into Youngblood number 8 and see what they've got for us this time. Our cover is full of quote-unquote action because there are speed lines coming out from the center and lots of people screaming and flying at the reader. Most noticeably, Nightsaber front and center. Unfortunately, even if this didn't have the standard hallmarks of Liefeld's artwork, lines, pouches, over-muscled bodies, and questionable anatomy and foreshortening, he just can't seem to be bothered to fix the little things. Like, say, the fact that despite Nightsaber being at the front means that Shaft on the left should be behind him. Of course, his leg and arm are clearly in front of Nightsaber. Unless Shaft is in front of Nightsaber and he actually has shrinking powers. Or maybe Nightsaber has growth powers. He's Australian but huge. And let's not forget Masada, who we got a more formal introduction to in Team Youngblood, who has decided that instead of charging forward, she's going to land on somebody and hope her ass defeats them. Or perhaps she's adopting the approach of Die Hard and attacking people crotch first. Speaking of, I won't really criticize the fact that there are 3 diehards on this page, since we've established he's a robot or something. We open with Shaft on board Youngblood's jet flying over the eastern seaboard. Jeff Terrell is thinking about life and death.
I wonder if 6 Feet Under is on Netflix.
And experience.
Experience, bish.
When he was much younger, his father liked to joke that experience was the name most men gave their mistakes. This ended up causing some confusion when they all ended up at the same class at school. A cheery, optimistic youth, Jeff didn't fully understand what his father meant at the time. Now he knows all too well. It turns out mistake was his father's favorite brand of booze. Mere hours ago, Terrell, known publicly as Shaft, field leader of the government-driven super team called Youngblood, dispatched 4 of his best agents to investigate a possible disturbance in the Nevada desert. For the 9th time, I liberated Kickassia and returned it to its lawful government. Why does nobody believe me? The 4 members of the team who were sent, Vogue, Combat, Dutch, and the original Die Hard, apparently were outmatched by what they found there, and one of them is now dead. It doesn't say which one has died, nor do I really care, since, let's face it, none of you are in any way invested in these characters. And I see Shaft has cured his Youngblood's disease, or at least it's in remission, based on his eyes in this panel. Although a side effect seems to be that his legs have stretched considerably. And yet we can see his feet, which is a much more amazing thing. As we move into the 2-page spread that's next, we see he's not even the tallest guy here, or the widest, given that now everybody looks like they have lungs the size of a couch. Just look at Shaft, Nightsaber, or even Troll.
So people are just balloons?
I joke with that clip, but it's really how they look. I've seen cartoon parade floats with more realistic anatomy. Oh, except for Masada, of course. Being a woman, she needs to wear the least amount of clothes as anyone, but also be condensed into a stick figure. Dear Lord, we can see her rib cage! And we can see why, given how she's standing on her tippy toes. This poor woman has been starving herself for her ballet lessons. Oh, actually, my mistake. That is not Masada. You can see why I was confused, though, since they are both scantily clad women whose focus color is green, and they're wearing head guards that shove out their hair above their heads. No, she's yet another new character. You know, when Liefeld called this the next generation of heroes, I didn't think he meant an entire generation of people. And this character's name? Silence, with PSI as in psychic at the beginning.
Because poor literacy is... Actually, that's kind of a clever pun. Never mind.
But of course, we need another new character while we're at it. Thus meet Task, as in, you're not even trying with this task, are you, Rob? Dude looks pretty much like Shaft, but with long hair, blue instead of red, and it looks like from that headgear that he's ready for his wrestling match to begin.
Task! You say that you're gonna make me black and blue, brother, but the truth is, my task is to put you in the button press, and then you're gonna be blue, brother. Oh. Ooh.
Ooh. Wrong kind of wrestling. Surveying those around him, Shaft sighs with discontentment. Comic book writing 101. Narrate what your characters are doing instead of actually showing it. No matter which way he turns, he's flanked by unfamiliar faces and those he barely knows. All around him are unfamiliar faces, brand new places, brand new faces. Shaft is upset because a lot of these people are fresh recruits and they're taking on something powerful enough to defeat one of their seasoned members, whom Badrock reveals to have been Combat. You know, the warrior guy with the giant pink gun. Badrock is eager to get into the fight to avenge him, but Troll just mocks him a little bit, because Troll is the worst.
When you've been around as long as me, you learn to put death into perspective. Heck, we could all die today.
I would settle for just you. Task says the new recruits are up for the task, and that since they're all Youngblood, they'll take out the ones responsible for Combat's death. Shaft responds, "Oh dear God, Shaft is possessed by a demon!" I'm the last person in the world to express this kind of sentiment, but, Shaft? You look prettier without makeup. We cut to New York City, where, oh good lord. You know, we talk so often around here about how bad Liefeld is at drawing people that we forget that he's so bad at drawing everything else. And on that slightly somber note, we shift our focus from the Youngblood hypersonic transport as it streaks through the star-filled sky above New York City. Oh, yeah, just look at how many freaking stars there are in this panel. We got so many stars. It's like I'm playing Mario Galaxy here. Eric Stevenson is credited for both script and as editor here, so you would think, as the editor, that he'd be able to call Rob and say, "Hey, dude, I specifically said there were stars in this panel. Could you draw some stars?" And Rob was all, "What, dude? Don't you see? The moon is there. The moon's a kind of star, isn't it?" And then there'd be this really long pause, and then Eric would be like, "Sure, Rob, whatever, as long as I get paid." And then Rob would say, "Yeah, right, paid." This panel is so beautiful in its utter laziness. This is Power Rangers Super Mega Force level extra effort to be lazy. Liefeld couldn't just draw some dots. No, instead he drew the moon. A huge moon that takes up the entirety of the sky, and no doubt causing massive gravitational problems due to its proximity, with detailing on it that, of course, probably took longer than if he had just drawn some dots. Oh, but why stop there? Hey, this is New York, right? What do buildings in New York at night look like? Oh yeah, it's just the same generic rectangular prism shape with crossword puzzles drawn in them, right? I'm sure that's fine. Rob Liefeld. We don't know why he still gets work either. So why are we cutting away from Youngblood? Because if there's one lesson this book has shown us, it's that it doesn't actually care about its own damn characters. For you see, now we can check up on Spawn. Spawn is in an alleyway with some homeless people, and for some reason, he stuck a bunch of scotch tape on his face. Oh, I'm sorry. Clearly those are supposed to be Band-Aids or something. Spawn, did you think they were kidding when they said it won't heal if you don't stop picking at it? The homeless guy who did that is apparently drunk and trying to get Spawn to join in on their hobo festivities. Also, his crotch is on fire. Might want to put that out. One of the other homeless says he's clearly not in the mood for his shenanigans. Homeless doctor or whatever says Spawn wouldn't do anything to him. I mean, you're talking to the guy who stitched old Hamburger Head up here. Bang up job there, man. I can't understand why you don't have a medical license anymore. And bullet through the head. I won't show you the panel that actually happens, since it's pretty gruesome, even if poorly drawn. The other bums have Spawn confront who's responsible. Chapel, who we saw at the end of last issue coming for Spawn. Oh, and despite us knowing from last issue that he was coming, and Spawn saying his name in this panel, the next 2 pages are a spread that we have to turn on its side, as if this was a huge reveal. Also, to keep himself from having to draw stuff like, you know, an actual background, Chapel now has his back to a wall to talk to Spawn, despite a second ago walking down the alley. So maybe he's talking to another wall? I should also note that Chapel, in continuity, is the one who killed Al Simmons, Spawn's human identity before he became, you know, Spawn. His leg is also bloodied up for some reason, despite it being fine in the last issue. I'm sure this is to simply imply he got into lots of fights before finding Spawn, but I prefer to think he just kept tripping thanks to all the smoke on the ground meant to hide his feet. Emerging from the smoke and shadows, he looks like the devil himself. Oh yeah, behold the face of evil incarnate, some dumbass with 2 bent pipes stuck to the side of his face. Also, despite killing that bum with a regular bullet, we see that Chapel is holding some kind of futuristic-looking gun with a pink glow at the end of it.
Too much pink energy is dangerous.
Hey, want to see another thing about Rob's terrible artwork? He can't keep that tape on Spawn's face consistent. The shape and positions of the Band-Aids keep changing. Chapel and Spawn posture at each other for a bit, lots of snarling, Chapel apparently drooling too, ugh. And basically it comes down to Spawn saying he'll listen to whatever Chapel wants to say. We cut over to Baffin Island in Canada. Beyond the farthest reaches of civilization, the Youngblood cruiser breaks through the clouds and begins its descent. Downward it plunges, moving swiftly and surely towards its final destination. And toward destiny.
Canada calls to ask, what are you guys doing up there?
Oh, my mistake, actually. It says toward its final destination. I shouldn't be surprised to find spelling errors. I don't think anybody actually ever read this thing. Apparently the leader of the villains, Maddock, is sitting in his big comfy chair when an even bigger dude shows up, the two discovering that Youngblood has arrived. Badrock is dropped down onto the villains, and the narration finally tells us Badrock's friggin' origin story. I did actually skim through Team Youngblood issues to see if they ever gave it over there, and it turns out they did! 9 issues in! Admittedly, they gave origin stories for a few other members too, but then again, maybe if they spent some time developing characters instead of introducing new ones at every opportunity, we wouldn't have this problem. So, what's his origin? When he was 16 years old, he was struggling because he was clumsy and awkward and, well, you know, a teenager, and decided to drink a vial of science that his father had been developing for the government in the hopes that it would help him. I'm guessing he knew enough about what his father was experimenting with to not just randomly drink whatever chemicals were in his lab, but it's hard to say with this book. It's honestly not a bad origin story. Pity that yet again we only know something because the narrator told us. Anywho, Badrock smashes through the roof. He attacks the dude who is Liefeld body type number 3, huge guy. Brief hours ago, he was enjoying his first real vacation since joining Youngblood, gleefully skiing the slopes of Vail, Colorado. He ran smack into a James Bond ski chase also happening, and it was frankly much more interesting.
That all came to an end, though, when he was attacked by the cyborg assassin called Overtkill. And when Overtkill ultimately escaped, Badrock was equal parts anger and frustration.
And he was mad and angry.
By the way, looked up the issue of Team Youngblood where the end of that fight happened. Badrock was pretty jovial about the whole thing, actually. And before you ask, yes, they were both scripted by the same guy.
Great continuity!
Turns out the huge dude fighting Badrock is named Blackrock, and he is supposed to look like Badrock, since they both took the same science formula Kool-Aid Badrock's dad made. They fight for a bit, and eventually Blackrock is knocked out, but more guys show up. This time cyborgs, I guess, given they speak like robots, but clearly have skin behind their armor.
What are you guys, Pez dispensers?
Does that mean my 4-year-old Pez is going to attack me? Hey, Star Trek Next Generation's 25th anniversary. I feel like I should be reviewing something this year. The other members of Youngblood fly down, and this time it's Task who's apparently got possessed by the Ink Demon. In addition, he's wielding 2 swords, but only one of them gets a cool glowy effect. It's not even like Rob forgot to add it because most of the sword is cut off. The next time we see him, it's the same deal. What, did he forget to change the batteries on that one?
Seeing Nightsaber in action is all the confirmation Task needs to realize the time has come to get down to business. He's already heard about the enigmatic Australian before coming to Youngblood.
Nightsaber, Australian but enigmatic. And of course, Silence, like how she was on the cover, prefers to attack her opponents in leapfrog position before creepily staring at the reader. With the cyborgs destroyed, they surround Maddock, the demon beginning its possession of Nightsaber now. Or maybe he just has really sharp, jutting cheekbones creating a shadow. And after some more posturing, our comic ends with the arrival of course, another new character!
That all depends on exactly where everybody's favorite werewolf fits into your scenario.
Werewolf?
No, werewolf. Where? Say it.
Take a look at this guy. Apparently not content to rip off Wolverine's design and half a dozen characters, Rob has now moved on to ripping off Sabretooth.
To be continued in Youngblood number 10.
Wait, number 10? What the hell happened to issue 9?
Space is warped and time is bendable.
That's a lot of MST3K in this episode. However, unlike MST3K, this comic sucks! I should note that there's another epilogue page with a guy standing on a boat coming towards something, and the narration says that they're approaching, and I think it's Shaft's dad from a previous issue, but honestly, I really couldn't be bothered to do anything with this. But just wow! It is amazing how much this comic took a step backwards with this one. Sure, issues 6 and 7 were still awful, but it felt like there was actually an attempt, for the most part, at developing its original premise and giving the characters some focus. It wasn't very well done, mind you, but the effort was there. But here, there were a few points where my eyes actually hurt from looking at the clashing colors and terrible artwork. However, we have yet again seen that Rob is more interested in creating new stuff than actually doing anything with those creations. And the fact that the book can't stand on its own is bad enough, since we need to read Team Youngblood to understand most of the plot. But now apparently this plot just hit the brakes for an issue for no adequately explained reason. Dear Lord, that was bad. Well, at least next week can't be that much worse. Oh. Goody! Hello and welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn. On February 19th, 2007, I created a blog. Inspired by websites like The Agony Booth, 3B Theater, Jabutu's Movie Reviews, and others, I decided to try my hand at doing text reviews of awful comic books. 10 years later, here we are. I often get asked how I got into this, and while I know answering it all here won't stop people from asking, I might as well try to reach the widest possible audience for a big anniversary like this. It's important to remember that before YouTube, video on the internet was just not really a thing. Piracy certainly existed for media through file sharing programs, but a wide online platform for producing and releasing original video content was not viable. The file sizes were just too big for the web. If you had video on a website, it was usually grainy 10 meg real player videos for popular franchises. I recall downloading clips of upcoming Pokemon episodes that had aired in like Canada or something at the turn of the century that hadn't gone out in America yet, and was satisfied with them despite looking like garbage. Audio was different, and you had an easier time sharing podcasts and WAV files than video. When YouTube did finally come around in 2005, it took a bit for a lot of people to start using it to create their own original content beyond cute videos or personal stuff that people shared. More piracy. Before that, the only way to talk about movies, TV shows, or indeed comic books in any long-form synopsis was, well, via text. And that's where those websites I mentioned at the beginning come in. These sites reveled in the cheesy, the terrible, and the dredges of media. Mystery Science Theater 3000 got us to riff the movies, but these websites showed us that the internet could expose people to thousands of untapped films and TV shows. Speaking of MST3K and riff tracks, the Agony Booth is where I first heard of Santa and the Ice Cream Bunny. Djibouti, where I first learned how terrible Superman 4 was. These people described movies in a way that made them accessible even though I had never watched them before, describing in detail every dumb scene, every idiotic piece of dialogue, and they did it with mockery and jokes. And they weren't doing it to make money, no one was paying them to do this, it was just because they had opinions to share and they clearly had fun with it. And I wanted in. I unfortunately didn't have the tools or money at my disposal to do this with movies, but I realized that I didn't really know any sites that were doing this with comic books, a medium that I loved. I wasn't an expert or anything, and I would argue even after 10 years and 430 plus episodes, I'm still not one, but I knew bad when I looked at it, and I had plenty of bad comics collected over the years, or just knew about through cultural osmosis. And since I was just starting out, I felt I needed to dip my feet in the water first, so I picked an easy target. The first comic released by Image in 1992, Rob Liefeld's Youngblood #1. The blog's original header was a picture from a Power Girl miniseries that had come out a few years before, showing Power Girl and Huntress sitting on a wall, some paint shop pro text of Atop the Fourth Wall placed over it. The first name I thought of for the blog was Comics Shouldn't Suck, but that was too similar to another blog I read at the time, Comics Should Be Good. And I've always been fascinated by the concept of the fourth wall, the invisible barrier when you're viewing something on a screen or in a panel. You can only see 3 walls at any given time in an image like this. The fourth is always hidden from view. I briefly thought of calling it Beyond the Fourth Wall, but for whatever reason, I went with Atop the Fourth Wall. And there we go. I tried to keep the reviews weekly, but since I was a college student and I wasn't getting any monetary reward for doing this, weekly became monthly, and monthly became whenever the hell I felt like it. You know, just like with History of Power Rangers these days. Then came the Nostalgia Critic, the AVGN, and of course tons and tons of other video reviewers who utilized YouTube and other video platforms to produce reviews of material. Come October 2008, I threw my hat into the ring for that with a review from the Clone Saga. And, well, the rest is history. 10 years I've been talking about bad comics, and it all comes back to Youngblood. And yet we're still not on issue 10 yet. Ironically, that's how long I'm sure it felt reading it at the time, considering the constant delays between issues. SF Debris has gone over that stuff in his Rise and Fall of the Comics Empire videos, which I highly recommend, but for now, let's talk about this odd little issue we have for the anniversary. For whatever reason, in September of 1994, the Image creators decided, hey, let's all switch what books we're working on for the month, thus creating Image X Month. Rob Liefeld went over to work on Shadowhawk #0, while Jim Valentino worked on this issue of Youngblood. I have no idea why anyone thought this was a good idea, especially considering the delay problems they were having working on their own books. Well, I suppose it makes sense for Rob, who seemingly keeps getting bored working on his own stuff to the point where he has to go work on something else for a while. Maybe that's why the bajillion times they've announced one of his properties is going to be made into a movie never ends up happening. He gets bored halfway through the script meeting and leaves. But hey, it ain't Rob working on this one, so let's dig into Youngblood #9 and see if Jim Valentino can do something, anything worthwhile. Or maybe 10 years after I started reviewing this stuff, it'll still be crap. The cover I have is perfectly fine and makes sense given the content of the comic. The members of Youngblood sitting on a couch watching TV together. It's okay, and frankly I'd be kind of hypocritical to be negative about the cover of something being a bunch of people sitting on a couch watching TV. Honestly, my only complaint about it is that Badrock sitting on the couch is making one side of the couch lift into the air. Except this isn't a seesaw, it's a couch. The middle should just be weighed down and affecting all four legs. So instead, we're gonna talk about the variant cover that Liefeld did. Man, oh man, this one's awful. Forgiving how boring it is with just 3 people in front of a gradient, at least the other cover had a background and seemed to indicate the characters had some personality. It's just horrific in how it's drawn. I mean, for all the crap we give Liefeld for drawing over-muscled characters, we sometimes forget that he's bad at drawing over-muscled characters. Look at all the massive neck veins Badrock has. How tight are his blood vessels to show those off just by standing like this? Hell, I'm not even certain he has a neck. I think the head is just plopped onto the middle of his torso. How come his biceps are half as thick as his chest? What are all the weird X lines on it? Scars? Veins? Pieces of string that got painted over to match his skin tone? And based on this woman's proportions here, we see the real target demographic of Youngblood. 90s Barbie dolls. How is that woman even sitting on Badrock's arm? There's nothing implying his fingers are curved in any way to have a space to sit on. She's just clinging to the side of the arm like Spider-Man. And by the way, classic example of Liefeld not thinking about proportions. Forgetting the 50-foot woman leaning on Badrock's arm, well, with both legs about 2 to 3 times longer than her torso and head, Badrock either has very tiny legs, or the woman in the purple bikini has even longer legs than the other, indicating that she is in fact Stilt Woman the Amazing. Also, notice how her arms are going straight down? That's because she has to hold up her bikini top by the armpits. It's not tied in the back! The legs thing is just amazing to me. 22 Brides is looking at these legs and saying they're over the top. Actually, screw the phrase over the top here. Clearly they are so above the top that they are in the stratosphere. Anyway, we open with Badrock's gaping maw getting ready to devour us all. I've been optioned! Sure you have, Badrock. Your movie will go down in history right alongside the Youngblood video game, the Brett Ratner Youngblood movie, the Goddessy movie, and the Extreme Comics cinematic universe as unparalleled successes.
Note, this story does not necessarily conform with any known continuity.
Whew, that's a relief. I'm sure everybody in the 90s was making massive flowcharts about the timeline of Youngblood books and where everything fit into continuity. Although already the book demonstrates a much better understanding of artistic storytelling as we see Badrock going around what I presume is Youngblood's headquarters, telling everyone about the deal in multiple panels. Also, they're watching Godzilla on the TV, which just makes me wish the comic was everybody watching Godzilla. It would be infinitely more entertaining. Anyway, he goes to each member of Youngblood to tell them the good news, all of them telling him basically the same thing. Be careful what you sign, see a lawyer, keep your eye on the royalties, etc. Also, Shaft is apparently playing chess with somebody unseen. Man, how weird is it to have someone playing chess seemingly against no one? Huh, got a weird sense of deja vu there. Troll even has advice. Just watch out for those Hollywood types, kid. Troll, he hangs out with you. No soulless Hollywood executive could ever compete with you, you disgusting imp. Die Hard's reaction to the news is apparently subdued since he looks like he's recovering from a bad hangover. Or possibly, being a robot, he's overreacting to some popcorn that's spilled out onto the countertop. But yeah, Badrock is ecstatic. I'm gonna be a star! Yeah, it's almost like you'll be a celebrity superhero and appear on David Letterman. Just like you were a few issues ago. How is this new for you? Badrock flies out to Los Angeles to sign the contract for all this. And on the plane, he loudly sings Buck Owens' song, Act Naturally. Because aging country singers were all the rage with 17-year-olds in the mid-90s. It's actually not his singing that's annoying to all these people, it's that they're on a United flight. As I've kind of implied over the last decade, Badrock is the best character in Youngblood, with a decent backstory and an intriguing premise of a kid, or teen in this case, stuck in an oversized, monstrous body. So putting him in a situation like this, where his inexperience and immaturity is both natural and ripe for comedic and dramatic opportunities. Anyway, Badrock arrives in LA. Ah, LA! I'm here! Swimming pools, movie stars, Hey, where's my limo? Sorry, Bad Rock, but Donald Pleasance had to use it to pick up Peter Frampton and the Bee Gees in the next terminal over. A representative or assistant or something from the studio, whom we never get a name for aside for Jeeves from Bad Rock, leads him to a limo. Somehow he gets inside the limo, despite the shot clearly showing that he is bigger than the door and there's really no angle from which he can enter. And then we get our establishing shot of LA and, oh good lord. Remember my rant from last time about the terrible, terrible artwork for one panel showing a star-filled sky above New York, wherein there were no stars, the moon was gigantic, and the buildings of New York City were just prisms with crossword puzzles slapped on them? Apparently Jim Valentino decided to try one-upping that. Let's take a photograph of Los Angeles and run it through a few filters so it's this dark, grainy mess of an image. Points for laziness, at least. As I said before, Liefeld's seemed like more work to be lazy in his regard, but this takes the cake. What I especially love about this is that I'm pretty sure this is supposed to be in the middle of the day, yet the filters make it look like the middle of the night. Hell, as a result, I can't even be sure if this is Los Angeles or not. We could be looking at a dark, grainy, multiple photocopied picture of Des Moines for all I know. Jeeves takes Bad Rock to his hotel for him to freshen up before his meeting with the studio. And now we have a proper establishing shot, and it is indeed night out, except we learn on the next page that it's 12:30 where they are, and the meeting is at 1 o'clock. So if it's nighttime, is Bad Rock's meeting at 1 a.m.? Was the pollution in LA so bad that it blotted out all forms of light? Or, given this is a superhero universe, is there a supervillain blocking out the sun a la Mr. Burns? Anyway, Bad Rock is, understandably, impressed by the hotel room. I haven't seen a setup like this since Pretty Woman. Oh my god, is Richard Gere gonna take me on a shopping spree? Hey, they've got little shampoos and conditioners in the bathroom. Oh my god, that's almost like every hotel ever. As Bad Rock asks if he can steal them as souvenirs, Jeeves starts calling the studio, desperate to be parted with him. But yeah, again, he's a celebrity already. Has he never stayed in a hotel before? No wonder they said this didn't conform to any continuity. Anyway, it's here that Jeeves reveals that the meeting is at 1 and they should be heading out. Bad Rock walks out with a friggin' sack full of soap, and I would question that, but yeah, just look at the guy. I applaud their forward thinking of making sure he had enough soap. However, Bad Rock, being a spoiled 17-year-old who doesn't know any better, says that they can't very well start the meeting without him, and decides to put on some TV. I wonder if there's any hockey games on, or a dirty movie, or maybe some cartoons. Wait, get me an internet connection. I can watch a dirty movie that is a cartoon. Jeeves finally gets him to leave, with Bad Rock acknowledging how the doors in the limo are a bit small. Except, of course, we saw earlier Bad Rock is too big to fit inside the door altogether, and his size seems to not actually follow a consistent character model.
Space is warped and time is bendable.
They arrive at the studio, with Bad Rock continually badgering Jeeves with questions until they finally reach the meeting itself.
BR, this is JP, AJ, RH, JM, YZ, VW, and Sully.
John Paxton, Angry Joe, Rutger Hauer, Johnny Mathis, Joseph Zaritsky, Victor Willis, and Sully? What an eclectic group of people at this meeting! Sully's the best, though. He's a funny guy.
Gotta tell you, BR, we just love your story.
Well, somebody had to be a fan of Youngblood to get this thing made.
It's got it all! Humor, pathos, all we need is a little skin.
Hey, I'm not that kind of a guy!
Of course you're not, and that's what's so perfect.
Okay, comic, I'll give you that one. That was kind of a clever joke. My god, don't stare directly into Bad Rock's mouth! Your soul will forever wander in the abyss! Anyway, they talk about the merchandising potential of Bad Rock as the real seller. No argument here.
Just think of all the possibilities! Pull toys, shoes, kids' meals, yo-yos, watches,
mining equipment, prophylactics, custom weapons holsters, pogs! Oh, God bless you, 1990s. A slimy lawyer goes up to him and says that, of course, some of the stuff will be for promotional purposes and therefore he won't get royalties for it, pulling up a massive contract for him to sign. And yeah, as expected, it's a garbage contract. I mean, we can't even see very much of it, but all of it has stuff like your concepts and your trademark. Also, blah 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 blah. I don't think this is gonna hold up in court, guys. The director of the film walks in, who you would think would be part of this meeting already, but whatever. The world's most successful movie maker, tycoon, bon vivant, and the social conscience for the entire world. Let's give it up for Mr. George Spielopoulos. Spielberg isn't available? Then get me his non-union Welsh equivalent. Though I am wealthy beyond the dreams of avarice, I must remain as one with the common people. I admit, I was a kid in the 90s, so maybe I just didn't notice this, but was Spielberg really known as a man of the people? Hey, I just want you to know that I really think you got a bum rap at the Oscars. But I won. See? Despite the insult to the guy directing his damn movie, Spielopoulos just ignores that and starts talking about his vision for it. What I see is a monumental epic with a full orchestrated score. By John William Stravinsky, of course. Sorry, but he's working on another project. But I hear that Howard Shore Bernstein is available. Bad Rock, however, has only one question for these Hollywood types. Can we go cruising the strip now? See the sights? Check out the babes? Heck, I'll even go for a few quick games of hoops if you old guys think you're up to it. It's 2 in the morning, Bad Rock. And indeed, they apparently let Bad Rock go on a sightseeing tour with Jeeves. I'd say that my joke about the time of day would just be me exaggerating, except once again, they do the massive amount of filters over a photograph thing over Grauman's Chinese theater, which again makes the sky dark and black. So this is in the middle of the night. Oh yeah, at the time it was Mann's Chinese theater, and they clearly don't want to say it for fear of a lawsuit or something, so they only say it was formerly known as Grauman's. Except it is called that again nowadays, so there you go. Bad Rock demands that, since he's now a big star, that he should have his handprints in concrete there too, much to the depression of poor Jeeves who has to arrange it. Although apparently from what I've read, that's not as difficult as you would think. Isn't he in Wildcats? No, stupid, Stormwatch. The next generation of heroes, everyone! So recognizable even in their own universe. I thought he was John Goodman. Ha. Ha. I thought it was Jerry Mathers.
This isn't funny!
Some women go up to Bad Rock wanting to hang off of him. Jeeves, bring the car around. The ladies and I would like to go for a ride. With the top down. But sir, it isn't a convertible. And Bad Rock rips the top of the limo off. You know, I was just thinking to myself that this kind of reminds me of a Twilight Zone episode. In that I want Rod Serling to walk out at some point and give an ending monologue so this thing will be over. Let's cruise Melrose. Maybe we'll see Shannon Doherty. And maybe something will actually happen in this comic aside from Bad Rock making an ass of himself. But I doubt it. Later, Bad Rock and the women, who have now transformed into 2 blondes instead of a blonde and a redhead as before, are walking down Venice Beach. Oh, and hey, a special guest appearance by Cinnamon over there. They spot Muscle Beach, where a bunch of weightlifters are showing off and, well, lifting. And Bad Rock decides to laugh at them for whatever reason. I don't know if this is Valentino making a jab at Rob or just weightlifters in general. It's just a bizarre sequence that's kind of hypocritical given the art style. Yeah, Valentino's art is better, but only by so much. Hey, you with the skin condition! You think this is funny? I can press 420! I can really blaze it! Why is everybody laughing? The Muscle Man challenges Bad Rock to see what he can do, which is kind of odd considering he's like a giant who's also over-muscled, but whatever. Bad Rock lifts up the concrete area where they're lifting and throws them all into the sea. Our hero, everybody! Come on, ladies, the sun is slowly sinking in the west. That was great, Bad Rock. They probably have concussions now. That was great. A day or so later, Bad Rock is back at Youngblood HQ talking about it with Troll, who asks if he got script approval and creative consulting, but Bad Rock, of course, says he doesn't have to worry. The show's gonna be great. It's gonna have action, suspense, everything. What messed up world are we living in where Troll apparently has more sense than Bad Rock? We then get a montage of the next 6 months. Bad Rock getting updates from the studio about the project, how media watchdog groups are pressuring them to change the script, and that they keep avoiding showing the script to him. Not too long later, TV Guide officially announces the launch of the TV series with little advertisements for the Wildcats animated series on CBS and Spawn on HBO, which just raises a crap ton of questions since, as we're about to see, both Wildcats and Spawn are still people in this universe. So is it like Cops where they follow them around, or did the actual people sign away their TV and movie rights? The premiere causes pretty much all the heroes of Image to gather together to watch it. And where is it being held?
We're just outside this stately mansion here in the heart of Gotham this beautiful Saturday morning.
Well, the Spawn/Batman crossover is considered canon in Spawn, so I guess, yeah, Batman does exist in the Image universe, so it's only appropriate. Also, Spider-Man's leg there. Cute, but what exactly is the point of referencing these guys? Shouldn't you want to not remind your readers of the competition? Also, why is the reporter not wearing pants? What? Is this a reference to someone? Badrock calls this guy Ruben. I get the feeling with his distinct look that I should know who the hell this guy is, but I'm drawing a blank. Also, get a load of Badrock's outfit.
Bad tie. No style.
We get a montage of various characters reacting to the news of Badrock's show premiering, including our old pal from that book I reviewed way back at the start of 2010, Pitt.
I'm looking forward to it! I only hope this series gets released more often than my own books.
No, seriously, it took Pitt 6 years to release 20 issues. All-Star Batman and Robin had a better release schedule. Even Spider-Man, here labeled as unidentified, speaks up about it. I think it's amazing, spectacular, and sensational. You could even say it's friendly neighborhood, web of, or even adjectiveless. At the bottom, there's this shadowy figure that I think is supposed to be Batman, except I'm just guessing here. With the generic mask shape over the face and complete lack of detailing, it could be Chapel or that Dutch guy from a few issues back. Maybe even the most memorable of Youngblood members, Task. Do you remember Task? Of course you don't. He was even in the last issue, and I don't remember Task. Anyway, here's this big image of everyone in the Image Comics universe, and it's fairly impressive for showing just the sheer total number of them. George Perez, eat your heart out. Okay, I'm hoping that was just some good-natured ribbing between friends at the time, because if it wasn't, dude, you don't get how couches work! By the by, I'm not a superhero, but why the hell did everybody show up to watch TV in their costumes? Anyway, the Badrock show starts with a rap theme song that we can't hear, but everyone is suitably impressed by. However, that quickly ends as we're treated to what the Badrock show actually is. A kids show with a doofy, fat cartoon Badrock who's singing a song about getting a pie in the face. And as the entirety of the Image universe begins laughing, you can see that Badrock takes it well. So here's my question. Did nobody actually read the TV Guide article about it? And so our comic ends with Shaft and Nightsaber discussing how Badrock will get over it, but they need to clean up their thoroughly destroyed TV that he smashed.
And the moral of the story is, be careful what you wish for. It might wind up on TV.
I wished for Youngblood to be a laughingstock, and I got my wish. This comic sucks, but you know what the sad thing is? This is probably the best issue of Youngblood so far. I'm not kidding. It has well-established characterization, setup, and payoff for Badrock's dickish behavior. The artwork is miles ahead of Liefeld since it has backgrounds and actual use of artistic layout and flow. There are jokes here and there that land. It doesn't introduce a dozen new characters that we're supposed to care about right off the bat. And it tells a complete story without a boring, nonsensical fight scene that we are completely apathetic about. Don't get me wrong, though. Just because it has positives does not mean that it is good. The comedy was more than a little over the top most of the time. Badrock was still a dick, and there's nothing to imply that he actually learned anything. The art was still either lazy with some panels or inconsistent with character models. And in the end, it leaves you with nothing but a feeling of emptiness for the whole thing. So even when the book is handed to other people who are not Liefeld, it's still garbage. Next time, something fun to show how this year can be better than the last. we're gonna actually have some Mr. T action in it with another issue of the A-Team. Hello and welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn. Well, it's 10 years later, and after that long, it's time to finally close the book on Youngblood. Well, its first volume anyway. Youngblood has had like a cumulative 100+ issues from several volumes and team-up books and whatnot. And of course, there's still the 0th issue to look at, probably do that next year. But of course, Youngblood has a very special place on this show. The original text review of Youngblood #1 is how I got started recapping and reviewing comic books. We coined the phrase Youngblood's disease to describe the bizarre tactics of artists to remove detailing of eyes in comic art, leaving them a void from which those afflicted will never see properly again. At least until the artist decides that they have pupils again. It introduced so many of you to Rob Liefeld, whom some people are now saying finally got decent with his artwork, after like 30 years or so of not being so decent. But even forgiving his artistic foibles, there's also the problems with him as a person, at times lauded as a massive enthusiast about the industry, while at the same time trying to cheat money out of Jack Kirby's widow, failing to pay his employees, and then not bothering to draw his own damn books unless someone is actually standing over him making sure he does it. Oh, but Youngblood #10 takes the cake, my friends. You know those lists that fans will often send to me about the top 40 worst Rob Liefeld drawings of the like? Yeah, there's one that ain't on those lists, but it's in this book. It's the worst. I won't be showing it to you either, and you'll understand why when we get to it. This is your official warning. While I'm not showing anything, I am going to talk about it a bit. If you'd be negatively affected by the sensitive topic of suicide, even just the subject itself is too much, here are the time codes in the video where I start and stop talking about it, so you can skip past it if you so choose. In the meantime, however, previously on last year, Youngblood #9 was an out-of-continuity story for Image X Month, where all the Image creators swapped books for some reason. It was still terrible, but it was certainly better than anything else that had happened so far. Previously on other issues, Youngblood was apparently in the midst of a crossover with Team Youngblood, not that it was ever advertised on the books themselves. That was the book that came out more frequently than the one that had actually started this little franchise. Our heroes, having recruited more people that are completely unremarkable and unmemorable, are off to Canada to fight some dude named Maddock, while Chapel, one of the more murderous, deranged characters of the team, and yet is still considered a hero for some reason, has gone off to confront Spawn, because he was the one who killed Spawn originally, which is why this is happening in Youngblood and not over in Spawn. In any event, let's dig into Youngblood #10 and see how bad this final issue of the first run can be.
Youngblood! Youngblood! Youngblood!
The cover is awful, which should surprise 0 of you at this point. You've got Chapel doing aerobics front and center with his leg stretching exercises. Seriously, I can totally imagine a workout video with these poses. Alright now, lift your guns up and down and up and down and squat and up and down and up and down. And I never really realized how stupid Chapel looks. If it was just the insane clown posse makeup, whatever, it would give him something unique. But then he has the cyborg earmuffs and what can only be described as a pipe organ strapped to his back. What the hell are those? Are they supposed to be other guns he's carrying? I mean, this was the 90s. I wouldn't put it past the artwork to just have a bunch of guns on his back.
Dude! When you have that much muscle mass, you need some way to release all that heat. That's why real heroes of the 90s have cooling vents on their backs. Also because they're so cool!
Oh, but it gets better, because we've also got an example of why Liefeld tended to avoid drawing feet, because here one looks more like some webbed duck feet while the other just looks tiny and smushed. I think the perspective is supposed to make the 1 foot farther back, but you couldn't tell because the leg sizes are pretty much the same. But for me, the crowning bit of nonsense are the little straps of cloth that he has wrapped around his biceps for no reason. Not only are they just swinging around in every direction they can as if gravity was all over the place, but I'm also pretty sure those are the same tattered armbands that the Ultimate Warrior had in his comic. Are they gonna start talking to Chapel too and telling him to asphalt this asshole? Spawn is up in the corner, and that's fine, but then inexplicably beneath him is a skull, I think? Is that supposed to be Chapel's face paint, but standalone? A Terminator? I don't know. We open in New York City, where we had left off before, with Chapel having just killed a bunch of homeless people to get to Spawn.
What's it gonna be, Spawn? Are you gonna do the splits with me, or do I have to kill even more people?
Chapel wants to know all of Spawn's secrets, in particular how the hell he's back after, you know, Chapel shot him.
I mean, come on, man. It's not every day one of the guys I wasted in the line of duty comes back to life. I want to know how you did it.
I mean, it's obviously not a healthy regimen of exercise and weightlifting. Have you seen these biceps? Also, nice grammatical error with the apostrophe in guys.
You don't know what you're asking, Chapel. Where I've been, even you don't want to go there.
You don't want a Youngblood movie, Chapel! I had my own movie, and it did not end well. Chapel threatens to go out and kill some more homeless people if Spawn doesn't start spilling the beans. From what I gather in the issue that this continues from, he can't just waste Chapel without using up a bunch of his energy doing so. But if he does, he won't have enough power to save the lives of all the homeless people Chapel has already shot. And that's just a guess since I don't know enough about Spawn.
There's been enough killing here tonight. I'll tell you what you need to know.
First, if you have to stitch your face back together with a shoelace because of Batman, be sure to take off the aglets before you start stringing them through. And so Spawn explains to Chapel his origin story about being murdered and then winding up in hell, where he begged for a second chance at life and ended up resurrected in his current state.
5 years had passed before I returned, and in that time my wife remarried and bore a child with another man. I always wanted a child, Bruce, but that was the one thing I could never give her. In a way, this is almost worse than hell.
On the other hand, though, woo! Bachelor life! Chapel realizes that if Spawn could beat death, then that means he could do it too. Well, sure, but I've got to imagine the devil's got like a stack of forms as tall as some of the artwork in this comic. Full of people requisitioning a second chance at life, dude. You'll be lucky if he clears that paperwork by the time 200 more years have passed on Earth. Meanwhile, we cut to Canada's Northwest Territories, where Youngblood is engaging Maddock and one of his agents. Warwolf.
Werewolf?
No, werewolf. Where? Say it.
Warwolf is battling against Nightsaber, who you might recall as being the Youngblood member who was Australian but Gambit.
I sure hope that swizzle stick you got there ain't no symbol of our everlasting love for one another, Mickey, 'cause I mean to break it off.
Is that a boner joke?
You're wasting your breath, matey. I'm not near as that excited to see ya.
Oh dear lord, it was a boner joke. Why is Warwolf making a boner joke about his bow staff? Boner staff? That could work. Warwolf transforms into an even larger, more bestial form and hits Nightsaber twice in a panel that one might think was simply copied, pasted, and mirrored, but fret not. Clearly, Rob redrew the panel. I mean, since when was he incredibly lazy or anything? Perish the thought.
What's the matter, pretty boy? You gone all quiet on me. You waxing nostalgical about how our roles been reversed since those far-off days when you was the troublemaker and I was the hero? Or you just choking on your fear?
Well, mostly I'm mad that you had to exposit all that since neither of our characters have gotten any backstory up to this point. The others are in the midst of fighting generic robot goons, but are aware that Nightsaber is in trouble. Who are the others? Why, Task and Silence, of course. You remember them, right? Of course you don't. They were only in one issue of Youngblood that I spotlighted 2 years ago. Silence, despite her costume just being a two-piece bikini, at least has a cool name and psychic powers, so that makes her slightly more memorable than her compatriot here, Task, who's basically just palette swap Shaft. And with a codename like that, you could give him any powers and personality and it would fit. He's like one of those online superhero generator characters with a bunch of the default options turned on.
Monica Kane hasn't uttered a single word since the day her new gene spawned abilities activated some 18 months ago.
Yeah, it might have something to do with how her body has been misshapen and warped as we see here. What with her compressed stomach, massive thighs, and more athletic lower legs. It's probably also hard to breathe, what with that tight strap around her breasts that's so airtight it's form-fitted to them.
What she doesn't communicate in words, though, is she more than makes up for with actions.
And those actions being telepathy, since we saw her just the previous page say something to Task with her mind. I'm so glad this book has a writer and an editor who are paying so much attention to what's happening in it. So, what is Task's deal?
The result of Project Youngblood's desire to create a perfect soldier, possessed of limitless stamina. Task long ago bid farewell to the rigors of disease and fatigue.
Well, except for his crippling case of Youngblood's disease, of course. Oh, and since he feels no fatigue, he has to constantly eat and poop a lot or he dies. The scientists were unable to replicate the results that created Task.
Not that Task minded one way or the other. For him, his abilities became an elixir.
They restored his mana? After he takes out some more robots, more caption boxes that tell us stuff about him instead of letting us learn anything about the character through dialogue or anything. I'm beginning to think Youngblood existed strictly to sell action figures with all these quotes supposed to be the blurbs in the backs of the cardboard. I mean, considering how I'm swimming in these things, clearly it worked!
Until now, Task's only outlet had been the seemingly endless battery of tests administered by his trainers in the blood pool. The virtual reality programs and live field simulations were nothing like this, though.
Wait, so Task is just Raiden from Metal Gear Solid? I mean, holy crap, he's even running around with a sword.
The thrill of real battle is like a shot of pure adrenaline to his system. And when it ends all too quickly, even he is surprised by the results.
Wait, when you stab robots, they die? What the hell? Anywho, Badrock is facing Blackrock, that villain who actually deliberately looks exactly like Badrock because they have the same source of their powers. I think. I can't remember anymore, and it's so hard for me to care. He's also rambling about how he's so much better than Badrock.
A well-known fact about professional criminals like Blackrock. They tend to boast and brag about themselves during the heat of battle.
As opposed to Youngblood, who have caption boxes to boast and talk about them in the heat of battle. Task comes in holding a sword, well, like this. Seriously, is this a real move? Because it looks more like an action figure that has its arms completely behind it. Is that the secret to Rob Liefeld? That he's been using He-Man toys as his art models this whole time? Anyway, Task cuts off Blackrock's head, but whatever happened to him allows him to just grab his own head and reattach it without any problem. However, Silence comes in, and this is a real highlight of the two extremes of the art: balloon or stick figure. Anyway, Silence uses her psychic abilities to knock him out on this 2-page spread that I have to turn on its side in order to read it. And then she gets to gloat about it in another 2-page spread I have to turn on its side to remind you all that her spine is broken in multiple places and she's pissed about it. Well, I tell a lie. She's not mad. That expression has another name.
No surprise!
Back over to Chapel and Spawn. Chapel threatens to shoot him if he steps any closer. Spawn tells him that what he wants to do is wrong.
Maybe it was wrong for you, Al, but for me, this is my ticket to ride, buddy. I want this.
Look, you might want it, but nobody else wants a Youngblood version of Ticket to Ride. What would even be the cities in it? Man, Chapel's got perfect teeth. Youngblood's dental plan must be amazing. Chapel talks about how his life has gotten sucky over the last few months. In particular, how a friend of his informed him of what had been done.
When he told me the agency had been infecting me with a specialized strain of the HIV virus over the length of my career.
So I looked this up, because that plan sounds like one of the dumbest ever in the history of this show. and it's only slightly less stupid. The idea was that this particular strain was dormant unless their agency activated it. Why it needed to be HIV and not just some other poison or the like is not made clear, but it's made even dumber when you realize that, at least according to Wikipedia, Chapel is a known womanizer. I don't know if that's really the case or not, since in the 10 issues of this series I've covered, we saw him sleeping with one woman in the first issue, which at this point feels like a million years ago. But if that is supposed to be the case, then congratulations! Every woman he slept with, assuming he didn't use a condom, and really, I cannot envision this guy doing that, has this strain. Well, some might scoff, that's not a big problem. As long as it remains dormant among all these partners, it shouldn't really be an issue. Yeah, funny thing about that, one of the things that's kept scientists from developing a vaccine or cure for HIV is the fact that it mutates like crazy! The idea that they have this one dormant strain that they can just keep as a safeguard is laughable considering how HIV works! And you gave it to the guy known for having sex! But since we need to accept this stupid plot point to move forward with Chapel's story here, let's continue. Chapel thought he was a dead man walking. Wind had me shuffled in and out of that joke-ass Bloodstrike outfit. I mean, did you ever try to do that rub-off bloodstain gimmick on its cover? It never worked! So then Chapel realized that if Spawn could come back from the dead, then maybe he could too. And indeed, that's what he now plans to do. Kill himself and come back even more powerful. I've got bigger plans for my return. Plans that will change everything forever!
You magnificent bastard, I read your book!
Hey, Chapel, any plan that requires you to kill yourself as step one probably needs a bit more workshopping. Spawn tries to get him to stop, but it's no good. Chapel shoots himself in the head. As I said at the beginning of this episode, I will not be showing you the 2-page spread of his suicide, because it is absolutely tasteless. It's frankly disgusting that it ever saw print. It's not like Liefeld tried to put it in silhouette or something. No, we needed to see the full gore of the scene in its already badly drawn detail. And I mean gore. I feel uncomfortable even describing any major details, so I will not be doing that either. And I could criticize so much else about it. How Chapel is holding the gun in a weird way. How the gun itself is so ridiculous, and it's apparently a laser pistol according to the text boxes. Just the actual effect of the shot. But it doesn't really matter, because the act itself, drawing a suicide that he apparently reveled in every bit of grisly line work, not to make any kind of point, not to show off the absolute horror of the act, but just because he probably thought it looked cool. I might be wrong about that or his intentions, but this is Rob Liefeld, and he has earned no benefit of the doubt. And it's not helped that he specifically thanked another artist, Stephen Platt, for layout assistance and inspiration for the bit. And here's the best part. They show this graphic, gory suicide, but they made sure on a previous page to censor the word ass. Because, you know, this is a classy book. This sequence is terrible already looking at it in 2018, but then you realize the surrounding context of this. Chapel probably would not be considering this idea if not for the fact that he is HIV positive. He even admits that he sees himself as a dead man walking. This came out in 1994, when AIDS became the leading cause of death for Americans aged 25 to 44, before multi-drug therapies and treatments were widely available, if even available at all. For many, being HIV positive was a death sentence, to the point where people took their own lives because of that news. And the creative team of this book had the audacity to turn something as real, as horrible, and truly tragic as that. Not to examine the realities of it, Not to show the feelings that people had at the time that they had to deal with. Not to explore depression or any sense of hopelessness that could bring someone to do such a thing. No. Just a minor plot point for their character's evil plan. And yet, said character is supposed to be a good guy, I guess. The next generation of heroes, everybody. So with that out of the way, let's get to talking about how this comic would be horrendous even without that moment. This is Spawn's reaction to the event, and I should note that he's not crying out, "No!" because of the act itself, but because he doesn't want Chapel to go through what he went through, the deal with Satan and all that. I don't even know how Chapel or Spawn thought this idea would work anyway. Do all mercenaries get the chance to become a demon when they die? Is that like written into their contracts? And then there's the artwork. The shoelaces through Spawn's face have not been consistent in any of the panels drawn in this book, but it really takes the cake when you have the shoelaces going over his mouth. The idea was to stitch it back together after the batarang hit it. It's not like the face is in danger of falling off completely. And shoelaces are not really known for their elasticity. Why would you ever connect his upper and bottom lips like that? How are they not just hanging loose during all this? Man, I guess we should have been using shoelaces instead of rubber bands this whole time. Oh, and of course, the comic is not over yet. What? Aren't you invested at all in Warwolf versus Nightsaber? No? Well, too bad. If I have to go through this, so do you. Somehow, Nightsaber gets freed and he shoots at the monster. Warwolf, piss off, mate. This comic can piss off. Shaft soon arrives overhead, revealing that he shot some arrows into Warwolf to help Nightsaber turn the tables. It's yet another 2 pages turned on their side. It's not even a spread. You could have done all this on 1 page. The team thinks they're almost done with the fight, but then Maddock himself shows up in all his boring glory. He knocks out most of the team, save for Shaft, who just fires some arrows that disable him. Well, thank God that this menace that has been an ongoing problem for Youngblood across 2 books and multiple issues has been taken down by some pointy sticks. One might almost think that this comic was as poorly written as it is poorly drawn. Maddock rambles about how this isn't the end, and Shaft rambles in return that, nuh-uh, it totally is, and eventually we'll round up all your kind and give you the kind of treatment you've been long overdue. Our heroes, everybody. We cut to an interlude in the sewers. It's happening. Can you feel it? The overwhelming boredom? Yeah, that started at least 9 issues ago. The fabric of space and time strains and contorts. And finally, it is ripped asunder. Frankly, given any superhero universe where the space-time continuum is getting ripped apart and put back together again, I would not be surprised if it had the tensile strength of tissue paper. Some ninja dude is being chased through a dimensional portal by purple guys. Over the course of many lifetimes, he has been many things. Hunter, warrior, seer, insurance salesman. Today, though, in this lifetime, he is Link! Man, the Zelda timeline is even more messed up than we thought if Youngblood is involved in it. Link is met by Shaft's dad from several issues ago. And that's it. Thanks for introducing this interlude plot point in the middle of your last regular issue! Oh, and it's another 2-page spread. Thank goodness we spent so much time on stuff like a giant image of a guy we've met like once before instead of the defeat of the villain. Anyway, back to the team. Shaft is congratulating everybody on a job well done, and Badrock points out that Troll didn't do anything. Hey, cut me some slack, Lumpy. Somebody had to mind this ship, know what I mean? Hey, I'm okay with that. It means we didn't have to see as much of Troll. All of a sudden, Silence cries out in pain. Yug! Silence, what is it? Are you okay? The painkillers wore off! My spine! And now enjoy this splash page of Silence's face. If Rob was struggling to spread this story over 40 pages, why did he even bother having it be that long? All of you listen. I have just sensed a terrible disturbance. As if millions of people who were subscribed to this book in comic shops read it and suddenly canceled their subscriptions. The coming of a great darkness! Yeah, it's called Volume 2. I'll get to that eventually. And so our comic ends with one last splash page, where we see a demonic version of Chapel standing over an image of Spawn and his dead body. I'm not certain, but I have the feeling we have all suffered a great loss. That a friend has fallen. Chapel was an amoral, psychopathic, murderous jackass who killed a bunch of hobos for no other reason than he wanted Spawn's attention. Don't try to play up like he was some great hero and friend. This comic sucks! It's amazing to me that this book and what it did isn't more talked about. Sure, Rob Liefeld has become a punching bag and a laughing stock in the industry, so you read almost anything of his and it feels all the same, but dear lord, it's incredible that something like what happened in this book isn't more well known. Youngblood was probably considered the flagship book of Image when it launched, the first comic out of the company, and 2 years later it hadn't even reached 12 issues before it got canned and relaunched. Even ignoring the despicable worst moment in it, the artwork is terrible, with exaggerated proportions and over-the-top violence substituting storytelling or sequential art, splash pages and two-page spreads padding things out because of the sheer laziness of the team's creator, and the writing is insipid and dull, telling us things about characters in text boxes about how cool and awesome they are, while they destroy robots without ever making any of these people feel like people. The plot about Chapel and Spawn is even dumber when you consider there's no reason for Spawn to even be involved in these events other than Chapel asking, hey, how did you come back to life? After 10 issues, I know as much about these characters as I did when I started writing reviews 11 years ago. Youngblood sucks, and I'll probably be telling you about them for the next 50 years at the rate I'm going. But let's be honest, no one wants to see too much of this garbage at once. On that note, next week, more of this garbage. You see, there's still yet another comic that was a text review I never made into a video. The first issue of a Bad Rock miniseries. Good news, it's better than this comic. Bad news, that just means it's on the level of bad for every other issue of Youngblood. Hello and welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn. There's been a lot of good stuff on the show lately. Well, let's fix that, shall we? Oh, Youngblood, I will never be rid of you. Even now, today's review is only spotlighting the last piece of material from your original run. And there are so many other runs in the future, plus Team Youngblood, because why keep the crap contained to one book, am I right? Hey, do you like reading stuff in order? Well, you're a chump, because issue number 0 got released between issues 3 and 4, making senses for people from the previous generation of heroes, damn it. Now, to be fair, there are plenty of reasons why a number 0 issue can be released later. It's not a practice to even have a 0th issue unless there's some special gimmick. Hell, I've complained about it in the Blue Beetle retrospective, but at least they had a little non-event in the New 52 that had every book doing a 0th issue there to help explain it. But here, just arbitrarily shoving issue 0 in between a few early issues? It's not even like it's a flashback, it's just the events that happened before issue 1. Why did this have to be like this? Why not have it be an annual issue with a framing device, or a backup story told over the course of several issues? But hey, at least we'll finally get some much-needed character development and backstory to the team that helps explain some of the events of the first 10 issues, right? Again, that's chump talk right there. We're gonna have an unrelated backstory that contributes nothing to the book as it existed. I suppose it could have been meant to be a storyline explored down the line, but somehow I doubt it. Youngblood drops plot points so many times you'd think its hands were coated in grease. And let's face it, even if it was meant to be that, it's not like the series is that great with the plot threads it does stick to. But hey, let's just dig into Youngblood number 0 and see if it's any better than the rest of the series.
Youngblood! Youngblood! Youngblood!
The cover is terrible, a wraparound extending to the back cover that just features a bunch of Youngblood members. Hell, it's actually worse if you ignore the wraparound aspect, because suddenly it's just 4 guys haphazardly standing on a rooftop and frowning. But hey, at least this angle let Rob avoid drawing feet a bit longer. The only one doing anything different is Die Hard, whose pose is... well... damn it, Die Hard's malfunctioning again and he's stuck in a T-pose! I once caught a fish this big. We open at the White House in 1988, where the president is being informed that Iraqi forces appear to be preparing to invade Kuwait. I do wonder if this is a case of alternate history as a result of superpowered beings existing in this world, or if Liefeld just forgot what year the Gulf War started. In any event, the president, who doesn't appear to be Reagan or Bush, but this brown-haired guy, is informed of his options for protecting the border. Namely that the only one he seems to have is to send in Youngblood. We have a Youngblood unit standing by. Which squad are you referring to? Colonel Stones, sir. You mean... Yes, sir. Stones Studs. We really should not have let them pick their own squad names. They're a relatively new squad with some potential personality conflicts, but I believe Colonel Stone's no-nonsense approach should be effective for our purposes, sir. So far, he's only maimed 3 of his teammates that he didn't get along with. Big step up from the last commander. What of the other Youngblood units? They're all presently engaged in other international or domestic operations. I mean, those McDonald's groundbreaking ceremonies aren't gonna happen on their own, sir. The word is given. Send them in. Send in the Michael Bay helicopters at sunset shots. Hope you like 2-page spreads you have to turn on their sides in order to read the comic, guys, because this one's got a few of them. Starting with this shot of Youngblood dropping out of the sky. The sad thing is that in better hands, this could have actually worked. A low-angle shot conveying just how far they're falling from the sky. But then we wouldn't have had Colonel Stone's arms so desperately trying to escape his body by pulling themselves out of his back. They are America's elite strike force, genetically enhanced to combat evil in all its forms. With such exciting, genetically enhanced forces for good like Crotch Thrust Dude, who might be a robot, and Captain, we're blackmailing him to work for us. And don't forget, Barely a Character Lady. The best of the best, as Hussein and his army are about to find out. Want you to keep that best of the best phrase in mind as we continue with this comic. Otherwise, I'm pretty sure Hussein and his army are going to be more laughing their heads off because Colonel Stone here has Sailor Moon-sized pigtails. Aside from Liefeld, the other artist credited in the issue is Dan Fraga. His work at Liefeld's studio was some of his earliest work, and it shows here. Very stiff and odd poses, from this one soldier breaking his spine to the guy, presumably, punching him with his arms that lack elbow joints. But I checked out some of his more recent work and, yeah, much improvement over the last 25 years. Kudos. Anyway, the book does actually introduce us to the Youngblood members here. Riptide, Mistress of Moisture, can command water in all its forms. Yes, even the gross forms. Looks like we've made a big splash, boys. In issue 10 of this comic, Chapel gratuitously and graphically committed suicide because an evil agency infected him with AIDS, and he thought that when he died, he'd come back with demonic powers. You are not a stupid puns book, Youngblood. Chapel, cold-blooded killer for hire, really likes weapons that look like pricing guns. Colonel Stone, aka Battlestone, does not get a narrative caption explaining who he is, even though this issue is about him. Anyway, he says it's time to move on, but another colonel, Boggs, says that they can't move on just yet, since the opposing army is bound to have supply tunnels underneath them in this area that they need to clear out. Battlestone says the tunnels are usually booby-trapped and they need to go, but Boggs is having none of it. I understand that the powers that be gave you the final word on this one, but you'll either have to arrest me or put me to sleep to stop me from taking a peek. Nothing says best of the best like disregarding orders and loudly announcing your intention to disobey said orders and walk headfirst into a booby-trapped area. Another guy goes with Boggs. How do they even know where these tunnels are and how to get into them? And they climb down into one of the tunnels. And they soon run into a booby trap that explodes said tunnels. You know, it's gotta be hell for the Iraqi soldiers wanting to get supplies out of here when they might accidentally set off a heavily explosive booby trap at any moment. One dude who forgot his morning coffee and all that ammunition goes boom. One soldier named Gamble, who for some reason has a stupid transparent visor in front of his face, wants to go back for the two, but Battlestone tells him to stay put, especially because of the further risk to lives. In addition, he had warned them not to go in. However, Gamble accuses Battlestone of letting them walk into the trap just because of Boggs' insubordination. You didn't like your authority being challenged, so you figured he deserved it! Bye-bye bugs, bye-bye problem. What? That's ridiculous. Tell you what, if you want to challenge my authority, why don't you step into that tunnel over there? Battlestone punches Gamble, shattering his stupid Google Glass prototype. That'll be enough out of you, Gamble! That really jaundices my face! Chapel, the cold-blooded killer, displays a surprising amount of empathy by pointing out that what Bloodstone just did was wrong. Gamble isn't a metahuman like them, and thus his punches are more dangerous. A fact that is made perfectly clear by the fact that that punch just killed Gamble. See? If I really wanted to kill Boggs for insubordination, all I would have had to do was punch him to death! Yeah, that shut you up pretty quick, didn't it? Die Hard, angered by this murder, forces the page to go into a 2-page spread you have to turn on its side. Just beautiful use of page real estate here. You idiot! When are you going to learn? This is one time too many! It was okay when you murdered the last 6 non-power people, but this one is too far! There's some weird coloring going on here. Maybe it's just the scans or how old the book is, but the pages drawn by Dan Fraga just have a weird, different color tone to them than the ones by Liefeld. The Fraga pages feel more like a Neil Adams Now comic. A bit blurry with softened tones, while the Liefeld stuff is your average early image look, with very bright and harsh colors. Color design and separations were done by different people, Brian Murray and Digital Chameleon, so it's possible that that's the cause of it here, one working on Liefeld's bits and the other on Fraga's, but it just makes them feel like we have 2 different books with the same characters in them. Anyway, Battlestone is pissed. First Boggs and Rains, then Lieutenant Gamble. I've had enough out of all of you. In the name of the moon, I will punish you. I've been doing this job long before you were created. Well, now you're doing it badly. Youngblood has a weird employee evaluation system. Die Hard knocks him down and Chapel steps in, saying that Die Hard's stepping out of line now, but he's not letting Battlestone get away with this either. He can either surrender with his dignity intact, or have Die Hard forcefully restrain him. When did anyone in this series have dignity to begin with? The mission is scrapped, and they head off in helicopters to another unnecessary 2-page spread turned on its side, featuring Battlestone in massive gold chains and arm restraints, floating in the vacuum of space. Yeah, it's just a crappy background of paint splatters, but every time I look at this, I expect Battlestone to start talking like this.
Know then that it is the year 10,191.
Battlestone and his massive amount of teeth are being put on trial for his actions, while he slowly turns into a demon. Like, seriously, check out the red eye and the demonic word balloon. Also, there's a big skull on his forehead.
Are we the baddies?
The tribunal elects to not imprison or court-martial him due to his service record to date, but because of the loss of life, he's getting stripped of his status with the government and the Youngblood Project. They also imply that they're gonna kill him to keep him quiet. We don't want to make any waves. This is, after all, an election year. Oh, early 90s naivete about what horrible things people would or wouldn't support. Oh God, please make it stop. Battlestone blames the untested operatives for what happened in Kuwait, but the shadowy tribunal blames him for his lack of exercising authority. As for the men, Boggs and Gamble, they were clones. We have no doubt we can replace them the same way we did you, Colonel. We think people will really like the Scarlet Battlestone. I feel like this clones thing should have been information we had previously, or had any kind of significance or relevance before this point. Oh, but then we learn that Battlestone is, in fact, a zombie. Yep, evil shadowy government organization had brought him back to life, a fact that he is well aware of. Oh, well, clearly I have the wrong comic here then. This is Bloodstrike #0, not Youngblood #0. Any second now, Bloodgun is gonna show up. Just seriously, is that the actual purpose of this 0th issue? To be a backdoor pilot to another of Liefeld's teams? Hell, Battlestone would go on to form another Liefeld team, Brigade, which is just bizarre because clearly it should have been called Blood Brigade. Battlestone condemns them for the cloning and resurrection of the dead, cursing his own existence as part of that. But despite him supposedly being a hero, his dialogue indicates that he has aspirations for world domination. I don't know if that ever plays out, but we don't have time for that anyway, because we cut to 14 months later as Shaft assumes command of Youngblood. Shaft is uncomfortable with having to wear a costume as part of his new duties on the team, but apparently it's a public image thing. So the entire premise of Youngblood was about how superheroes would be treated like celebrities if this was the real world, but this book says that the heroes are just artificially created by the government for their covert military operations. I think the real issue with Liefeld drawing Feed is that he didn't know how to make them fit proportionally with the rest of the over-muscled bodies. On their own here, they look okay, but so much tinier than the rest of their forms. These characters might as well be walking on stumps. Anyway, Shaft is introduced to the rest of the home team of Youngblood, giving us a slightly better introduction to these characters than we got in the actual first issue, as well as another character who, well, showed up at the end of Youngblood number 10 in a completely different costume named Link. Here, he's just some dude in brown who has psychic powers and might as well just be one of the other 100 or so Youngblood members introduced over the series run. The best part is that according to the brief research I did, he apparently just disappeared and then reappeared in issue 10 for reasons that were never explained. I feel like as I continue to review Youngblood issues, the, I don't know, explanation of what happened to characters is going to be a recurring motif. And so our comic ends with a photographer arriving to take some promotional shots for the team. If you could all get together and give me your best grimaces, I'd appreciate it. Magazines love it when you look boring and grumpy. Another instruction the photographer apparently gave off screen was, make sure you're all squinting really hard. The beginning! Yes, most comics have their beginnings between issues 3 and 4. This comic sucks. It feels incredibly short, but that's mostly because of how much space is wasted with 2-page spreads you need to turn on their side. Pages 14 to 21 all need to be turned on their side, and despite some of them having multiple panels and a layout that would work just fine on a single page, or in the case of Battlestone standing in space, just a panel taking up a good portion of a page with other panels on it, they're just not filled with very interesting details. They're loaded down with exposition that doesn't actually contribute anything to the story. The artwork is bad, but I'll give the Fraga pages some credit in that they at least have a better flow than the Liefeld pages, which are really just a few panels of people posing. No one feels like they're moving in his panels. The Fraga ones, while having less than stellar artwork in regards to character models, at least seems to understand how sequential art is supposed to operate, and I can follow what's going on. The story provides some backstory to events that transpired prior to the first issue, but it doesn't inform on the book or give new information and details about stuff that happened in the first 10 issues of its life. Nope, just here's what happened one time, and it might lead into some other books I create, but not the one you bought. Next time, we travel to a different attempt at creating a new original superhero team that failed in a completely different way. And big surprise, it wasn't a very good sandwich either.